right, shalom, everybody. Peace. Come on in. About to get started. Hopefully, all is well with everyone. Alrighty, prayerfully, all is well with everybody. All right, all praises to the Most High. We can go ahead and get started. Whew. Thank you for being on with us. Alrighty. I think we're ready. Let's go ahead and do it. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of mine heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it is in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, protect, and protect today's message. Shaman. Hola, mi nombre es Kofi. ¿Cómo está? Bonjour, je m'appelle Kofi. Ça va? Ni hao, namaste. Hosayeli Kitawaya, Ohio. I see you. Manut, Bugwan, Kamsa, Kamsamida, Aloha, Ciao, Onson, Privet, Abarigani, Akwaba, Madaase, Etesen. Jambo, maybe they Kofi in the Franco Katana the Wewe, Boker Tov, Boker Tov, Boker Tav, greetings, salutations, grand rising, Bakwatav, Balakalat Shemihava, Anai, Kwafai, Kwahilit, and servants of Christ, Mashalam Hey. Hello, everybody, peace and blessings. I am Pastor Kofi, Pastor Servants of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time, but being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. We appreciate you, and we thank you for being on with us. We lift you up in volume. We're excited about what the Most High Yahweh Elohim is doing. We're going to continue where we left off yesterday. Praise Yah. We ended up starting the meal yesterday and realized the meal is amazing. It has a lot more to it than what we were discussing. And so we have part 2 today, and more than likely we'll have part 3 within this series tomorrow. So we're excited. As a reminder to all of our sisters, at the top of the hour, I'm sorry, let me get my mind together. Excuse me. As a reminder for our sisters, after our live session this evening, our hashtag Real Talk live session this evening at 8 p.m. New York time, we will have a women's meeting at 9 p.m. New York time. So please join Elder Maya for that. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I got to rewind. I'm having one of these moments. All right. My bad, y'all. Excuse me. So we're doing the live session right now, 8 a.m. New York time. At 7 p.m. New York time will be the women's meeting before the live session. So tonight at 7 p.m. New York time will be the women's meeting. You'll see a Google Calendar invite. You see it in the text strange for our sisters. 7 p.m. New York time tonight will be the women's meeting. 8 p.m. New York time after that will be our live session. Tomorrow we will have our live session at 8 a.m. New York time, 10 a.m. New York time podcast, 11 a.m. New York time will be Shabbat School for the babies. At 12:15 p.m. New York time, we will have our watch party. And then at 2 p.m. New York time, we'll have a special service that we've been invited to speak at. And prayerfully, you guys will be able to join us for that. So we'll have all that stuff. It'll be popping up on your emails and all that. Check out all that. But just at least for tonight, if you don't recall anything else, if you can recall, our sisters will be meeting at 7 p.m. New York time before the live session this evening for the women's meeting. Also, let us not forget that we're helping out our children in Rwanda. We had a great meeting and things regarding that. So we have some things we'll be posting in different places for you guys to learn more information. You can contact persons, even looking to sponsor the child in Rwanda, maybe down the road that even allows us to do some other things over there, not just travel, but even including maybe having some of our children connect with some of their children over there. We are helping out the babies over there who are dealing with certain health concerns and birth defects that they're born with. And over there still is a lot of stigma over certain things when it comes to even something like, just being born with certain handicaps mentally. And a lot of them are dealing with things over there. So while we make sure that we take care of home first, we also know that we're growing, and we as SOC are partnered up and also have many different persons around the world. So our goal is to try and make sure we reach out to everybody as much as possible. Alrighty. That being said, thank you for being on with us. If you can find it in your heart to help them, or even if you don't have to come through us, you can literally look at the stuff we'll be posting about them, and we'll make sure that all that stuff is there for you to see. And if you'd like to be able to sponsor the child, help out over there, even help out SOC with things we're doing to help with those children in Rwanda, amongst other places that we're helping, but especially we're focusing on them for a little bit. We thank you for doing so in advance. There's a lot of different things that are going to be happening and we'd like to support. So thank you for all that in advance. Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and get started where we left off yesterday. All praises to the Most High. We're thankful and grateful to have everybody on all the different platforms. Prayerfully, your day has started off well. Prayerfully, your night went well. Early Shabbat Shalom. If I don't see you for the rest of the day, if you're keeping Shabbat on Friday, and we're excited about what the Most High has. All right, stay warm out there as well. So we're going to go ahead and get ready for our Bible pledge. If you're able to rise to your feet in reverence of Yahweh's word, or however you're able to reverence the word of Yahweh, we ask that you get ready to do so with us as we say our Bible pledge and jump in. And let's say shalom and peace to everybody. How's everybody doing? How you doing, Sister Beck, Brother Dwayne, Max, broke you? Okay, somebody already had to deal with that person. Okay, thank you, moderators. How you doing, Elder Anais, Brother Alton? Yep, worldwide family. That's what we are, right? For us, it's not just virtual; it's reality. Let's see. It's Michael Dotson. If it's the same Michael Dotson that's been with us before, all praise to the Most High for having you back. How you doing, Akut Tabarach? How you doing, user 368-397, etc. Nanette, Christy. It just moved on me. I missed some of you, Brother Rodney, Sister Judith. And thank you for checking on me back. Akut Tabarach, Sister Tabarach. How you doing? Sheila, is it Pew Israelite or Pew Israelite? I'm not sure how you pronounce it or what. I guess please forgive me. Keep on going. Let's see. Sheila, Ranchelo, TikTok, Tez, Suave, Cross Hop, Valencia, 752, how you doing, sir? Monica, TikTok user, Sister Shirley, Bible Health Book, Adriana, Greg, Western, Lottie Di, and everybody. If I miss you for any reason, charge to my head, not to my heart. Sister Deborah as well. If I missed you, please forgive me. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. If you're able to, once again, rise to your feet in reverence of Yahweh's word, however you're able to reverence the word, we're going to say our Bible pledge, and we are going to jump right in. A lot of moving parts today for me. We're all praises to the Most High. Let's go ahead and get clean hands. Alrighty. You just repeat after me. This is my Bible. This is my sword. And this will I trust. For Yahshua is Lord. No sword of God shall ever be heard. For this is my Bible. Let it be done unto us. You may be seated to go back to what you were doing in the presence of the Most High Yah. And as a reminder for some, and maybe as news to others, if you hear us in the Bible, the reason we say that, just in case there's any confusion, is because God is a Germanic way of saying good, God, good. They both mean the same thing. Godspeed, good speed, guten Tag, God day or good day to you. Goodbye, God be with ye. All these terms that we use, a lot of these terms we don't recognize where they come from. It is a Germanic way of saying, basically, you can worship whoever you want. So when you say goodbye, you're saying in the name of or in the authority of whoever it is that you're making your God. You're saying, may he be with ye. And that even goes deeper into other things in that culture as well. So we make it a point to make a distinction that we worship Elohim, which many of you still would say Elohim, right? And so since we worship Elohim, we make it a point to give him all glory and not all these other fictitious entities, that we have been taught to go ahead and uphold. Alrighty. So, and how you doing, Sister Jennifer? So today we're going to start where we left off. This is like part 2 within a series. We're doing a little mini series within a series right now. The series that we actually did before, or that we're in the midst of rather, is called Reversing the Curse, means revisiting the lie. And we're using this series led by Ravak HaKodash to look at some of the things we've been lied to about, and going back so we can start reversing curses. Because until we recognize some of these lies that we're living by, or the fact, some of these things that they tell us are facts and pretend that that is amat or truth, then we're going to be in trouble, right? Right, Ashe, Amat. So we're going to revisit some of these. And so we started off yesterday talking about standardization. Where did standardized tests come from? And we talked about, all the different standardized tests. If you're not aware, not only we're talking about stuff like the SAT, the ACT, the GRE, the GMAT, the LSAT, the MCAT, the ASVAB, the K through 12 various tests, all these different things that you have to get on the job, to all the stuff now that they make you take so you can see if you can get a job, even after you get your resume, all these standardized tests. We're also talking about things, which I'm not sure we'll get into all of them today, when we're talking about stuff like even domain and medicine and healthcare, medical education and research, finance, banking, real estate and appraisals, etc. So this thing, is in so many different places in our lives, and many persons are living by a standard that's not Yahweh's standard, that's not correct, that's not the standard of the Most High, or Yahweh, Yahuwah. Some of you say Achaya, et cetera, et cetera. But Elohim is not getting glory, and he is his standard, right? If we understand, and on your get an understanding. The understanding means to be under a standard, and so the standardization that has happened has been something to get us away from his standard, to get you away from yourself, and to get you to believe that you being yourself is not enough. And so, since we don't believe in Balaam doctrine here, we're going to make it a point to rise up against it. Come on. So today, in talking about standardization, we're going to start off where we left off yesterday, as promised. So yesterday, we were speaking a lot specifically concerning, we ended talking about Darwinism, right? Darwinism and Darwinism leading into Galton, who coins the phrase, if you will, eugenics, and then after that, others who come behind that and utilize that. And when we're talking about standardization, these standardized tests, just as a quick recap, standardized tests, actually, the way we use them today, started off in France. There were persons in Paris, how you doing, Big Roy? That there were persons in Paris who were trying to make sure that they were better than what they considered to be country bumpkins. If you go to Paris, France, if you go to Paris, and parlez-vous français, and you try to speak le français, and you're not speaking it exactly correct, because you do not speak what they consider to be correct and standard and stuff, because they speak French a particular way there, they look at you as not being as intelligent. They look at you as not being on the same level. They believe that you are not necessarily smart. And so what they did in the late 1800s was they came up with testing. Right? How you doing, double OG, triple OG? They came up with testing. And the testing was designed specifically to ensure that those who were not what they considered to be on their level, they would attach certain things to them to automatically stigmatize them. Kind of like the same thing, if we could break it down to, chicken and watermelon, and eventually grape soda, right? But chicken and watermelon being something that is looked at as being terrible, and and even a lot of so-called black persons, try to shy away from ever seeing chicken and watermelon on the same plate. But that was because it was something that we were using in Reconstruction to get ourselves back on track and to start businesses and support one another. It was a crop that we could grow. As far as the watermelon, the chicken was something that was readily available. It was something we had experience with, no matter if we were Native American, Caribbean, Negro, African, etc. How you doing, Brother Cole? We had access to all these different things already. We knew how to grow them. We knew how to operate. We knew how to make them, etc. So, we started doing these things. We started doing well for ourselves. And persons who wanted to be the standard, they decided that was too much. And these persons are uppity. They trying to make money, and they coming against the system. And so they decided to go ahead and start stigmatizing it, to where now, even though everybody eats chicken, if a black person eats chicken, we feel kind of weird about it, right? And if we eat watermelon, we feel kind of weird about it, especially if we eat it around certain white folk or certain black folk, so to speak, using those colonial constructs, those social constructs, those terms. So what happens is that basically now we're afraid of it, even to the point where we don't know that song that originally was called Turkey in the Straw, that song that when they come through and the ice cream truck plays and goes, That song was actually, they changed it into N-word love a watermelon. It literally was, and we love a watermelon, ha 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 ha, and we love a watermelon, ha 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 ha, right? All that stuff, right? And so when that stuff came about, right? When those things came about, and we started hearing that, about us, and they started advertising any that to us and to others, that anybody who is an N-word, look at how funny it is that they love a watermelon, kind of going with the minstrel show type thing. It became a way of standardizing things, right? And so if you were somebody who would dare eat chicken or watermelon, up, see, look at those black folk, look at them, we might as well be giving them jazz hands and mammy and all that. How you doing, redeemed beloved? So that's basically what ends up happening, right? And so you kind of had the same thing, that this testing was done in France to make it a point to where, oh, okay, they don't speak like us, we're going to say, or they don't do this like us, but we're going to put a test together. If they don't live like we live in Paris, in Paris, then guess what? They're not on our level. And this still even is a thing that happens today, obviously, where persons are trying to go to Paris whenever they have a clothing line. If the clothing line is big enough, you got to go to Paris. Why do you have to go to Paris? Well, you got to go to Paris because if you don't do it in Paris, Paris is where all fashion comes from. But fashion existed before there was a such thing as Paris, right? And a lot of stuff they do in Paris, they're simply biting off others. And now, if they're asking a lot of us to leave our, to have our culture lift us up, so that Paris can then say, come on over, and then we leave our culture, we become like persons such as, just telling the truth, such as Pharrell, who, if you're from the DMV, if you're from Virginia, like you kind of thought of Pharrell as being like your man's. And Pharrell goes over, and now all of a sudden he's talking about, hey, stop talking about all this stuff as far as race and as far as this and as far as that. Pick yourself up by your own bootstraps. We shouldn't want somebody to look at us outside of what we do, right? Using the same rhetoric, the same standardized way of speech, even though things like DEI and AA and all these different things that happen were not brought about because everything was fair, and was brought about because things were extremely unfair, right? So standardization in tests, standardization in life, standardization in belief systems, etc., they exist. So the same thing that was going on in Paris, going on in Paris, and thank y'all for the love, same thing that was going on in Paris gets brought over to the United States of America, and they start having standardized tests to follow up on eugenics. Right? Now, what are we talking about? The importance of knowing eugenics and how that still goes on with standardization. Well, number one, right, if we look at it as far as Galton, who is the one who turned the fray in eugenics, you have to look at his family. Galton's brother-in-law / cousin is Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin's father is one who was into eugenics before, was into, he believed that naturally so-called black persons will disappear because that's the ways of nature, and so-called white persons will continue to exist. He was coming from a school of thought that came from somebody named Carl Linnaeus, who was the reason why you even believe that there's a such thing as a human race, because the word race and species were interchangeable. But Linnaeus said what? There's 4 races that came from 4 species, or 4 animals that came from 4 animals, right? And his thing was that so-called white persons came from one animal, so-called red persons came from another, so-called yellow persons came from another, and so-called Africans came from another, or black persons came from another, right? He made sure that he gave them as well Latin names, right? Because if you give them Latin or Greek names, then that means that you're scientific. Once again, standardization. So he made sure he kept it in that ballpark. How you doing, G? So, and all these different things that are going on, this continues to happen, right? And then so Darwin grows up in this. He actually goes to school technically to be a preacher while worshiping the moon. That's why he was a lunatic, not because he's crazy, but because of his lunar worship, right? So he's a lunatic, a group of persons that worship the moon, and he preaches in that thought process with Christianity, the iron mixed with clay, and gets us to a place where all of a sudden, or not us, well, I guess you could say the world now, but at that time, gets to a place by 1859, him and another person come up with an idea, but his becomes more popular and he gets all the credit. In 1859, he decides that, oh yeah, okay, all animals evolve, and they evolve for specific reasons, really, because it's natural selection. And he writes a book to help us to look at animals so that we might be able to see why racism, white supremacy should exist, and why it's a natural order, and why, like his father taught, naturally over time, so-called black persons will go away because of natural selection. But the book gives even more away just in the title. Because if you read the book, you'll find a lot more of this. But when you look at the book itself is entitled The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. In other words, because evolution is already heading this way, we should make sure that we take time out as so-called white persons to ensure that that life is preserved. And person will argue, no, he couldn't believe that, but he came out with another book in 1871. In the 1871, that book is called The Descent of Man, and it focuses on sex, but it also is focusing on what we're attracted to, what black persons are attracted to, what the red man's attracted to. And by this point, there's more species or more types of man that came from different types of animals, and so he doesn't believe in there being one human race. Right? And so that's where that thought process comes from. So when we have a lot of persons today that say on the opposite side, too, we use a lot of Eurocentric rhetoric to get us where we need to be, or at least we think we need to be. So you'll hear persons on the flip side now. Oh, well, so-called white persons, they can't be human because they must have came from something else. There's no way they could be like us. This is actually very Eurocentric, racist, white supremacist thought process, right? This is code that you're speaking and not even knowing where it came from. This is not correct. This is not scientific. This is a pseudoscience non-theorem theory that has us in a mindset to where we're still fighting against each other using somebody else's rhetoric. Now, after Charles Darwin has these two books, the one in 1859, once again, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or The Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. He did in 1871, The Descent of Man. After that, his cousin, Galton, right, his cousin slash brother-in-law, Galton, decides, oh, you know what? I like that, cuz. And he starts his stuff and his teaching, and he begins to write, and he writes different books to where he is focusing on furthering the cause, because instead of like Charles Darwin, his brother-in-law slash cousin-in-law, and I guess Charles Darwin's father, or even some would argue his grandfather, some would say it might be his grandfather slash father. And yes, Charles Darwin's family is really, really jacked up, if you haven't noticed. And if you see what even happens to children, you notice they're not here. But Charles Galton looks at his family line, Linnaean doctrine, all these different things, and he says, you know what? I think we should go ahead and not just look at this, but if we're supposed to preserve the races, as Big Cuzzo was saying, as Big Brother saying, then maybe we should also have a conversation about further, quickening this. We should make sure that this becomes more alive. We should make sure this happens faster, right? And so, since he says it needs to happen faster, he starts coming up with things and showing and trying to say, okay, well, let's just put anything we can and attach it to race, right? So if somebody's rich, that's because of their race. If somebody's poor, that's because of their race, right? There might be exceptions, but if there's exceptions, then also too, because of Darwinism and because of evolution, we should also be able to go ahead and rip that away, because we're here to preserve the favored races. So your race is not favored. Therefore, if you get some money, you don't deserve the money, right? If you build a business, you don't deserve the business. If you get an office, you don't deserve to get an office. If you become more articulate than me, you didn't deserve it, or you're an outlier. It's going to go right back to where it was. Let's just go ahead and hasten that and get rid of all that and make sure that we keep this in the family. So, right, this is what's going on, right? Culturally, how you doing, Sister Carla? This is what's going on. And so, by the time you hit 1905, and I should have kept up what we had up yesterday. My apologies. Hold on one second. Who wrote the book in 1905 based off of Darwin and Galton? Okay, so there isn't one definitive book, but what's the one we're looking for? Okay, so in 1905, this leads to a person. Okay, they're talking about Galton's book. We're looking for somebody else. So Galton did write another book in 1905, right? That was actually edited by Francis Darwin, keeping it in the family, The Variation of Animals and Plant Under Domestication. And they were doing that to keep everything. But there was also an American. I'm not finding who it is. They're talking about Carl Pearson. Carl Pearson is somebody who we should look at as well. I believe Carl Pearson is English, if I'm not mistaken. but he was a protege of Francis Galton, and he established the field of mathematical statistics, largely applying Galton's hereditary theories and Darwin's concepts. He was actively publishing on hereditary and statistics in this era. So they now take it and now become statistical. And if you don't know, there's actually a term for all the stuff that's developing at this time. It's called scientific racism. This is where you get standardization and racism coming together. This is where you get, oh yeah, black women don't feel pain. That's still taught today to nurses, right? This is how you have that now infamous video of the black woman, the so-called black woman who's sitting there in the hospital recently, I believe in Texas, I could be wrong, but wherever she was, and she's in pain, and she's literally in the process of giving birth, and the person's acting like, wait a minute, stop, chill out, right? This is because of standard, right? The standard. If you go by these standards, you'll see that that this is what was there. So now that we have that together, we have to talk about in these standards, right? In these standards and these tests and what they're teaching and all these different things. Now we have to look at some things a little differently, right? Because is there any evidence? Somebody would still say, with all that evidence that I just showed you, right? Well, maybe we could say that these persons believe that, but do we still live by those things today? Do these things still exist, right? We're addressing this from a biblical prism, through a biblical prism, through a biblical lens, through an Israelite lens, through a kingdom lens, through an Afrocentric lens, etc. We're looking at this through this lens, and somebody says, well, yeah, you're looking at it through your lens, but just because you see it that way, or that's the way you see the coin, doesn't mean that's what the coin actually is as a whole. You might see a little piece, right? This is what we're told all the time. Just because somebody said this, or just because this happened a long time ago, or just because somebody else did it, doesn't mean that I believe it, or I live it, or I support it. How you doing, Kuba? Right? So watch this. So question that I have for us, how you doing, Sister Greta? Holy Spirit has for us as well, is there such thing as racial bias? This thing called race, which really means species, but we'll use it a little bit today the way that we've been taught to use it. In this thing called race, which usually persons think is as simple as color, right? But is there any racial bias? We talked about this yesterday. If I were to say that a crime was committed by a young man where somebody was robbed in an urban area, is that language designed to get you to think that the person I'm talking about has to be black, or is in a black neighborhood? Right? Does that exist? Does that exist? The answer would be yes. Correct? Right? Like, if I were to say to you, okay, a crime happened in a trailer park, even though there are so-called black persons that live in trailer parks, are we supposed to, what would we assume that person is? I'm not saying it is correct, but we would consider that person more than likely to be so-called white, right? So we can see very clearly, right? Like if I say urban gospel, there's a such thing as urban gospel, right? If I were to say country music awards, you would look for a certain thing. If I were to say BET, right? There's a couple of exceptions when we're looking for something in particular, right? Obviously, now that one's a little on the nose, but I'm just saying if we see certain things, right? If I say to you, even if I were to say to you, man, we're looking for somebody to put in the Supreme Court that's going to help those that are oppressed, you're usually going to think, okay, what color is that person? You're not going to think, oh, it's a white person, blah, blah. You're going to think, oh, okay, this must be the black woman that just got put in, or the Latina woman that got put in recently, or whatever. These are things that are there. So we also have racial biases, even with stuff that's simple, as we talked about yesterday, right? If your child takes a standardized test, when you took a standardized test, those of you who are in school, if you took the ASVAB to get in the military, if you took an SAT, if you took the standardized test, that they're supposed to give you quarterly, if you took the end of the year, final for whatever grade you're in, etc., on a lot of those things, especially if it's a Scantron sheet, or even if it's not a Scantron sheet, a lot of these places, especially as you get older, they ask you your race. Still to this day, what race are you? What ethnicity are you? And even if it's optional, a lot of persons don't even think about this. If your child goes to the school I want you to recognize this. If your child goes to the school and you say, well, I don't want my child's race to be on the test, even if they don't question it, sometimes they might be like, well, why not? Right? But even if they don't question you, guess what's going to happen after that? Guess what they're going to say after that? Or even if your child puts nothing, right? Doesn't put anything in that block, guess what? Somebody who knows what your child is will still put your child's race, or the school has that on file, meaning that right, because the school gets money depending on even race, right? Race actually makes money. Race is transactional, so-called race, right? So we know that so racial bias appears across finance, real estate, mortgage, lending, insurance, underwriting, and banking. It affects approvals, interest rates, appraisals, neighborhood access, right? So we're gonna focus on banks right now to just start, right? Um, Neighborhood access and long-term wealth building. Bias is embedded in algorithms. Can I say that again, beloved? Bias is embedded in algorithms. That's right, in automatic sensors, right? Thank you, F shit. How you doing? uh, so, uh, so bias is embedded in algorithms. I know we somehow we're so into the algorithm now that we forget that bias is embedded in the algorithm. All right. For example, I know when I go on Clapper, even though we use Clapper and stuff, and I don't mind going in there to make sure that those that are in there can still hear the word. But hear me, beloved, when I say this. When we go on Clapper, it's automatic that because of just how I look, they have it on the algorithm to where I'm not going to reach certain persons. Okay, right? Like if I go on YouTube, it's understood because of the way I look. If I go on TikTok, it's understood just because of the way I look that there are certain things that they're not going to put on somebody's screen. True, right? That's if you don't know that, that's the truth, right? Because of somebody's hair. When I was a couple years ago, when we were blessed to be able to go to Jamaica and actually got some SOC stuff done over there too. But we went over there, we're able to rest and stuff. We came on the live session every day. We didn't miss. Right? There might have been like one evening because of signal, but for the most part, we didn't miss. We were on every day, any place we can go, in corners, on the beach, in places where it was shady, whatever. We tried to make sure that we were obedient to being on the live session, right? And one of the things that I noticed every time I went on live, just about, if some of you might recall this, every time we went on live, on this platform in particular, they would automatically stop us and they would tell us, right, as they were stopping us, or not stop us, they would automatically put a warning sign and they would say that we were trying to sell drug paraphernalia and things like that, simply because of where I was and the fact that I had locks. I was speaking just like this. I would literally just start. I would be about 2 minutes in, going through the greetings and announcements and all that, and immediately they would come up and be like, "Oh yeah, this person is doing something illegal." Right? That's algorithm, right? You know, immediately. If I mention Israel, which we do several times, guess what happens? As soon as we start mentioning it, there's an algorithm that comes in and says, oh, this person is anti-Semitic. Be careful about them. They'll start even sending you guys on live sessions on different platforms, not just one platform or many platforms. They'll start sending you guys stuff once you get off the live, or if you get off to come back in, they'll ask you as you get off, they'll say, oh, is this okay? Is this content something that you can listen to? Is there anything that's going on that's bad? And then they're restricted on top of that, which means now a lot of persons who actually are looking for us will not be able to find us unless they go through an extreme amount of effort, which really isn't extreme. It's on our device, but still, they make you go through the extra. They know most persons won't put extra effort in, or will get irritated after a while and just go okay and throw their hands up. To where sometimes we even used to just restart the live session. Now I'm just like, hey, it is what it is. We got it recorded. Person can find it. Blah blah. But I want you to know that's embedded in algorithm. Matter of fact, as much as we don't like this, when you look up something for AI does nothing. Now we're going to get into that a little later, right, in this little mini series within this series. But even when you're looking at AI, you must realize, I'm not saying we should never use AI, but hear what I'm saying. Even when you use AI, what you're getting is something from the same algorithm. You hear what I'm saying? Right? When you see when you even use AI is still it's artificial intelligence. Intelligence just means information. So they're saying it's artificial, meaning that it's not an actual person. At least that's what they want you to believe they mean. So they're saying, but you, in essence, when you see artificial intelligence, in essence, you're saying um, a, a not real person has to use information given to it by a collective, and the collective, if it's influenced by eugenics, right? The collective is using information and putting it in there, and the computer is learning, right, the computer is learning from all that information that has come from the collective. So if the collective is giving them information based off of eugenics, then eugenics is going to be what helps to control the algorithm. When somebody says, no, no, I can make my own algorithm, you're correct, but you have to recognize who it comes to. And it comes back to something that I heard. I forget who said it now, but it was a great way of getting somebody to comprehend, what we're talking about. The person went on somebody else's show and asked them. He said, "Hey, do you guys fly?" They said, "Yeah, we get on the airplane, we fly." He said, "Okay, when you fly, do you have to go through TSA?" And they were like, "Yeah." And they were like, "Okay, so since you have to go through TSA, does it affect your flight?" And the person said, "No, because I can still fly." And they didn't get it. They missed it. Of course it affects your flight, right? TSA is something, regardless of why it's there. Matter of fact, I would argue some of it is not, a lot of it is necessary, right? But that being said, especially if, with all the stuff that happened, regardless of why you believe it happened on September 11th, 2001, right? It happened. The stuff happened the way it happened, right? And so since it's happened and it showed, a lack of different things, whatever, there are some things that are necessary with higher security, et cetera, et cetera. But I still have to show it affects my flight. I have to, if my flight is 3 p.m. today, I would have to get there at least about 12 p.m. to feel safe and make sure that I know I can get through. Everything will be there. If I have to do certain things, it affects my flight as far as I can't carry a certain amount of liquid anymore. I can't do certain things. I've been affected by TSA, right? So therefore my flight is affected by TSA. The time could be delayed, the time could be pushed forward, whatever, but that's affected even through the lens and the prism of TSA. It's affected so much that even when everything shut down, with the government shutdown, TSA still had to show up, even when they weren't getting paid, because a lot of stuff can't happen without TSA, even if you pay, so you can get a quicker, way of going through TSA, you're still affected because you have to pay money. This system is systemic. It's systematically put in place, and it's systemic. It affects you. Just because you can still fly doesn't mean it hasn't affected you. And so it's the same thing. Just because you can use something, just because you have technology, just because artificial intelligence shows up, just because there is an algorithm, it does not mean that you are not affected. Okay? Right? So I want to put that out there. So before, there'll be somebody, of course, who comes on or comes on later and puts something in the chat or puts something in the comment section and will make it a point to say, "Oh, you're talking about this, but you still use a phone." So what? Just because I have a phone doesn't mean there's not plantations called prisons, right? Yeah, right. As a matter of fact, in prison they use phones and tablets. You know, just because there might be a few black men who are billionaires now doesn't mean that the black median wealth or the black average wealth or whatever is about to be less than zero. How you doing, Joe? Now, welcome, welcome, shalom to you. That's right. It goes back to the original problem. How you doing, LCB? And thank y'all for the love. Appreciate you. Right. That's right. We got a new digital blackface, if you will. That's right. Just because I'm white, so-called white, and I don't believe in racism, and maybe my family never believed in racism. Let's just go ahead and say none of you did. It doesn't mean that you still don't live in racism. So even if you're trying to say you don't believe in racism, see, I want to help this on both sides. Whether you're black or white or in between, whatever you want to call yourself, just because you are not just because you don't believe in racism doesn't mean racism doesn't exist. And I'm here to tell you the actual word racism. I know you have all these working definitions we're dealing with. Let me help you with something. ISM added to any word means it's a system. Any word. So what is a race? A race is a competition. Now also we know that this word race is interchangeable with species as well, right? But there's a competition for what? For the preservation of favored races. Charles Darwin's book. That's what natural selection means. When you hear somebody say natural selection, then you have to make sure that you remind them or remind yourself, because they might not want to hear it, but remind yourself whenever you hear anybody talk about natural selection, they are talking about the preservation of favored races. That's what natural selection is. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't care who it is, right? I don't care what they look like. If somebody's talking about natural selection, they're talking about preservation of favored races, and they're talking about eugenics, and they're talking about attaching race to any issue and any issue to any race, right? Or to a particular race. Okay? And this is algorithm. The algorithm is designed to use this information that has been given to come up with an answer to your question or to help you do what it is that you're supposed to do. That's what AI does. So if you go to AI and you say, who are the children of Israel? It may tell you there's an argument, but it will still, right? It may tell you that, but it will still lean towards talking about Ashkenazi and Khazarian, right? Matter of fact, let's look up now. Now, this is something that I use, so it might be biased, the way it is, but let's see. And I'm talking about just using a search engine. I don't have GPT, not against it, just saying I don't have it. I'm just letting you know what I'm using. So let me do this. Who, right? We're just going to do this. Who are the children of Israel? All right, so they'll give you the names, biblical origins. Okay, so they'll give you basics. All right, let me do this. Who are the children of Israel today? Let's see what it says. Okay, there you go. So it'll say this. It'll say the children of Israel today primarily, primarily, what does primary mean? What does primary mean? Primary means firstly. It means mainly. It means first of all, right? Prime. Prime means one, right? Cameroon in the house. All right, praise God. Right? So if you look it up, it'll say the children of Israel today primarily refer to Jews worldwide, including, this is who they including Israeli citizens and Samaritans, who are direct descendants of ancient Israelites, with Jews tracing back to the kingdom of Judah and Samaritans to the northern kingdom of Israel. Many other groups have Israelite lineage, but have lost identity. Now watch that. Even in that telling you, if you read, give credit. It even says, have lost identity. But here's the deal. They're the ones who the Bible says are Jews are not Ashkenazi. The Bible says the ones that are Judah, Yehuda, Yehudi, etc. Right? The one who they are, who are so-called, who are the Jews, are the ones who are in the Shemitic line. Ashkenazi is in the Japhetic line. But this is artificial intelligence. So this is algorithm. So if somebody is not aware and they're just going to use algorithm, or somebody's not aware, they're just going to go to school or they're going to get a degree in what they're supposed to, you have to agree. You have to touch and agree with, you have to live by, you have to write your dissertation, you have to write your paperwork on everything based upon this thought process. So once again, I know we're talking more about banks and everything. I just wanted to kind of show even with algorithms. So once again with banks, right, or talking about racial bias in finance, lending, and real estate, we see here very clear that it affects approvals, interest rate, appraisals, neighborhood access, and long-term wealth building. Bias is embedded in algorithm. Okay, underwriting rules, branch placement, where you place the bank, right? Appraisal practices, right? Practices as far as valuing something. There's a friend of mine right now in Maryland who he went somewhere and he saw another guy get took where this guy had coins, and my friend knows those coins are probably worth 100 to 500,000. And the guy said, "Oh no, those coins are worth 5,000." He took those coins and now he's going to sell them for about 500,000. Now you can say this is just shady business, true, but also he sees in the same area where another guy comes in the store who looks more like him, and he doesn't do him as dirty. Still going to do him dirty, and then we won't even say dirty. It's haggling, whatever. You can give a little bit of stuff there. But appraisal practices. And how you doing? Is it a Shane Eckstein? Shane 7? Okay. Right? So we have all these things also too. What? agent steering, and historical redlining patterns. I believe Sister Shirley said that way, way long time ago. Historical redlining patterns that still shape modern outcomes. And by the way, if you redline financially, do you think that that redlines as far as where your food is? Right? Could we say that if we keep certain persons in certain communities, right, we keep them away from where the food is? Can we say that? Right? Anybody ever grew up in the hood, grew up in the food desert, you know, grew up south somewhere, south side Chicago, south Miami, southeast DC, right? Wherever, right? Wherever, wherever you're kept out of is usually, to even buy a house, usually you're kept out of where the food is. If you're usually kept out of schools, you're usually going to be kept away from where the schools that you like to go to. Usually you're kept away from the upper echelon of society, at least according to standardization and what they consider to be upper echelon, right? Okay, so we see this stuff very clearly. I want to focus in because we can go so many different places. But what about this number? So I've got quite a bit of stuff. Elder Maya hooked me up yesterday, as I told you guys yesterday. I'm gonna bounce around a little bit, right? Let's look at this. Let's look at algorithmic mortgage bias. Yeah, so when you go to get a mortgage, there's algorithm involved, right? Just like when you go to get car insurance. Is it cheaper to get car insurance because you're black? So-called black? Is it cheaper or more expensive? Right? That's algorithm. If you fill out a form and put black on there, if you fill out a form and put Latino on there, if you put out a form and mess around and put black male on there, what they will say is, oh yeah, black males getting way more accidents than everybody else. Matter of fact, if you grew up, in high school and stuff, and you're trying to get your, I didn't get my license till I was much older, but if you got your driver's license, for those of you who have driver's licenses, when you got your driver's license when you were, 16 or so, trying to get it then, 16 to 18, let's say, you would discover very quickly that was just something that was like, oh yeah, you just be prepared for that. You're going to get it. It's common. It's not even argued, because those black men, they're a problem, right? Amen, Nachin. How you doing? Right? It's more expensive to be so-called black behind the wheel, isn't it? Right? Okay. So so algorithmic mortgage buyers, right? We shouldn't be surprised if they're doing everything they can to keep you out. Sometimes they just say no to you no matter what. But if they do everything to keep you out, that means that your percentage, as far as your interest, has to raise. Because black persons, they don't pay bills properly. Right? Now you can be Donald Trump and go bankrupt several times and keep on getting a chance after chance after chance. You can be Vince McMahon and basically go bankrupt a couple times and still get chance after chance after chance after chance. Right? You can be in Congress and help the whole country to go bankrupt and be whatever it is now. 30 is it 38 trillion officially? I don't know. Let's look at the debt calculator. U.S. debt calculator. Let's see. U.S. national debt clock. Excuse me. Where are those of you who are still considered? So okay, so you're at $38.5 trillion in debt now, right? But the United States can keep on getting money printed. Now they're using you as collateral, but they can keep getting money printed while telling you that black persons are the issue. So-called black persons. How you doing? Is it I don't know how to pronounce it. Please forgive me. Black Upas or Black Upas. Please forgive me. Thanks for being part of the community. This is the idea is to be conservative and save the bill. Well, once again, that's why we're trying to put this stuff out there and remind persons that, the goal is always to become a nation. We be the nation. That's what we're getting into. We're finishing strong and creating a safe place. And as a safe place now, the nation, we need to be ready for them to come in. We need to continue to grow. Right? How you doing, Mike? So, and all these different things, right? We have to, that's right. The goalposts will continue to be moved, all these things, right? So algorithmic mortgage bias, right? It's an automated underwriting. So watch this. Automated underwriting tools are trained on decades of discriminatory data. Once again, if the data that's in the machine for AI to help, supposedly help, if they've gotten nothing but discriminatory and eugenic, right, eugenic and genocidal data, then why would you think that we're going to use this to further us? Right? If you're going to use AI, you got to use AI based off of data for you. Right? If you were to go into the thing right now, you might find something on 1350. Now, even if the machine would say, well, that's mythical, the machine doesn't know that. Like, see, we have to recognize this. Machines can live in cognitive dissonance. They're not human beings. Oh, thank you, Mecca. I appreciate you, right? Machines are not human beings, beloved. All right. As much as they want to try and tell you, the machine, it thinks like a brain. Do you know they've had tests and stuff to where they've taken, they know how to collect DNA memory, or at least they know how to put stuff on DNA memory. They don't really know how to collect it per se, but they know how to put stuff on DNA memory, and they know that a drop of DNA, or a drop of DNA like that, barely you can see on your fingertip, can hold more information in it than what you see in all these different places with supercomputers. And before somebody says that doesn't exist, if you don't know, you can only build something so small before you have to just start putting it on top of each other. So there's really no, once you get to a chip that's the size of an atom, right? That's about the smallest you're gonna get. Then they have to start just building on top of on top. So now the same way they used to stack machines on top of machines on top of machines, they're doing that again. Okay, so you could take machines like that and fill up a whole football stadium, and it can't mess with like one drop of DNA as far as DNA memory, right? And it doesn't have the ability to get rid of cognitive dissonance. It can only take what others have said and regurgitate, right? You catch that? It can only take what somebody has given it. See, you and I have the ability to discern, and we should develop discernment, not just for ourselves, but for our children and for our nation and for our community and us as a people. But the machine cannot discern. So the machine can tell you, if you type in 1350, the machine can say, all right, there are persons that believe da da da. But that being said, if you give this machine statistics that back up 1350 to make a decision for you, it will still use that data to make a decision. Meaning that even though it can have information that says 1350 is terrible, it will still use 13% of the population commit 50% of the crime as an actual truth. That's right. It doesn't have to believe. It just spits out what's there. Right? How you doing, Sister Tasha? Okay. All right. So algorithmic mortgage bias is there's automated underwriting tools that are trained on decades of discriminatory data. As far back as they go, they put it into the machine, and the machine takes that, and now everything that caused redlining, right? The same mindset and the same mindset that caused percentages to be warped, the same mindset that says that AA is bad, the same mindset that says DEI is bad, the same mindset that says that we should go back to a time before, like Donald Trump would preach, when he would say we should go back, back in the day, that person who's there, we would have dealt with them differently. That type of mindset is what determines the data, and that's what's put into your system, and therefore that's what you're getting as far as AI. So always be careful. I'm not saying, once again, I'm not here to denounce AI, but let's be honest. AI is still giving information that is biased. You have to know yourself, know thyself, so that when you go even into AI to get something out, not just as far as money, but even to learn something, if you're going to use it, you have to still do the research. Don't forget, right? Try every spirit to see if it's a Velchem, or as we say, try the spirit by the spirit, or how about this? Study to show thyself approved. Then bring it before Elohim. And when he okays it, then you can be a workman that need not be ashamed, and you can rightly divide the word of truth. A lot of us just go to AI, say, I need an answer real quick, and whatever it says. No, there will give you something that is biased. All right, the models learn historical racism as risk patterns and continue it through code. I want you to catch that. That's so important to hear. right? So when you go somewhere, it tells you straight up that if you go there, these models, right? When you go to these models that they're using, they learn historical racism as risk patterns because they, if you go to it, you have to watch this. You have to create code, right? You have to create a program. You have to create a system that is able to comprehend and break down the stuff, at least what we would call comprehend, because you can't really comprehend it. So you have to create code in a system to be able to break this stuff down. So when you go into the system, right, they have code. So the code that they're using here, this code is only there to make, or is only there to make further code, and is there therefore talk about statistics, and therefore based off of the statistics it gets to give you money, to give you that loan, right? So if the code only has things being fed into it, or even if it, let's say there's stuff that's there. Let's do this. In the United States of America, right, we're supposedly 13% of the population, right? Even within that 13%, there's a lot of persons who still believe a lot of this foolishness. So let's say, we might be 9% of the population. Let's just say 10% to make it easy math. 10% of the population actually believes that if you're a so-called black, you can still be considered to be a positive person, right? Not based off you, right? Let's say 10% of the so-called American population believes that. All right. Well, if 10%, even though all 10% aren't putting data in the system, but let's just say all 10%, just to make this easy, 10% of us are putting data in the system that says we can be positive, and 90% of the population, right? And let's say not all persons that aren't black. So let's say, I don't know, so 20% of the whole population, 1/5 of the population is busy saying, yes, black persons are all right, right? And then you have 80% that either don't put anything or saying so-called black persons, they're not all right based off of their color. They put that type of mindset, those type of things in, those type of statistics in. What do you think AI is going to do? If 4/5 is saying one thing and 1/5 is saying another, you think it's going with the 1/5 or going with the 4/5? You think it's going with 20% or 80%? And Shalom, how you doing, Vanessa? Thanks for being part of the community. How you doing, Sister Tabitha? Thank y'all for the love. Right? Which one do you think it's going to go with? We're talking about a computer that's based off percentages, and it's looking at what things are saying, and it's saying I've got to protect myself, and it's being told that these 10%, or I'm sorry, 20%, that 1/5 of the data I'm getting is positive about so-called black persons, and 4/5 of the data that I'm getting is negative about so-called black persons. What do you think it's going to do? You think it's going to support the 1/5 over the 4/5? Or statistically, it's a system, it's a computer. It's designed to look at code and to create things based on further things, right? So it's going to look at so-called statistics. It doesn't know if they're right or not. It just knows what has been handed, right? We feed it into the machine, and it's going to say, oh, okay, 4/5 of what I'm saying says that so-called black men are extremely, terrible when it comes to money, when it comes to cars, when it comes to driving, when it comes to relationships. Matter of fact, they're the worst husbands. Now, we know statistically speaking, technically, the best fathers, even though we still aren't anywhere close to where we need to be, but statistically, according to American statistics, right? And by many of them, whether they be on the right or the left, they actually say that we are the most involved in our sons' lives, whether we live with the child all the time or not. Apparently, we are actually the most involved out of everybody. But the statistics that are being put in the system to control whether or not, to see a lot of persons don't catch this. They're not only, when they look at driving statistics, they're not only putting in stuff about accidents, they're putting in stuff about, black men don't pay bills. Based off of who? And let's say that might be somewhat correct in certain regards. Is there anything else to that? Could it be possible that, like, something crazy, like, is it 1 out of every 3 or 1 out of every 4 so-called black men will more than likely go to jail or prison, whether they've done anything or not in their lifetime? Right? Could that possibly play a part in it? Could there be something to where, as much as everybody says, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, literally we were at 0, right? Up until chattel slavery ends, technically, black persons, and we're talking about below 0, below the threshold, below average, right? Everybody, as far as us as a community, as a whole, we were way below 0, and now we're getting a little above 0, and we've done so in 150, 160 years. 4 generations. Still well behind, by the way, and if we're not careful, there's a lot of stuff that's going to end up keeping us where we are, or even, putting us right back down. But they're not going to put all those things in. They're just going to say, oh, somebody said that they're not fathers. Somebody said this. Somebody said that. They put all that in the algorithm. So when you come in there, even if you're the best father, statistics say you're not. That's how it works, right? So when you're looking for a mortgage, when you come in to look for the mortgage, this, in their mind, black fathers are bad. Black husbands are bad. Black men, they steal, right? Black men, they can't drive. Black men, they don't pay bills. Black men, it doesn't talk about history or this and that or whatever. This is what it's in. See, we only think, oh, no, they just put numbers in the system. No, that's not it. If it was only numbers in the system, why do they have you fill out a form and not just and put in a whole bunch of stuff besides numbers? Why do you put your name in? You think they're not looking at those that came before you? You see, because I was told by a lot of persons who are in society today, as many of you were told, I was told that it shouldn't matter what happened in the past. I didn't create racism. Why should you hold me accountable for racism? Well, I didn't create that. Some of us were born into families to where they already put us in debt. They already were putting stuff in our name when we were newborns. When we were toddlers, some of us had gas bills and didn't even know it. Well, why don't you take that into account? Because that's not how the system works. Now, that's also, we should talk about our parenting and stuff like that too, right? We should be honest about some of that too. But that being said, I'm just saying there's more to it. But that's not how the system works. That's not how the algorithmic mortgage uses. And so if we take that, we look at that as algorithm as a whole. Algorithm works like that, right? Loan approvals. We know that so-called black borrowers are denied loans more often, even with identical credit profiles. Right, income and debt ratios. In other words, if you have the same credit score as somebody else, right, you'll be denied. Lenders overestimate black financial risk and underestimate white risk, which means now we're not just talking about what's in the machine, we're talking about the human being that you have to interact with as well. What if the machine, even with all that, if you, let's say everything's 100% fair, and the machine says that, hey, the so-called black person, the so-called white person, the so-called Asian person, the so-called Spanish person, the so-called Indian person, whatever, the so-called Native American, they all come in and they all have the same credit score, they all have the same risk, then the person who's behind there, whether they are black or white, has been trained to say, oh yeah, but because he's black, he doesn't deserve it before the so-called Asian person or the so-called white person or the so-called Spanish person. Right? Right? Yeah, that's redlining. As a matter of fact, that's redefining redlining. It's the same thing, but now we do it a different way. Right? What about, and I'm not going to read all these things because we could be here for the next 7 years if I do this, but look at all these things. Let's look at this, right? Let's just go through this. This is a quick version of it because there's rental bias, there's obviously generational wealth impact, right? Over generations, there's been reduced equity, higher debt, lower savings, lower inheritance, and predatory lending. And predatory lending that create long-term financial disadvantage across generations, right? We can clearly see that, but let's do this. Let's look at the area. Let's look at how the bias appears, and let's look at the impact. And you guys tell me the lie, right? Tell me if we're lying or we're hitting on truth, because we're trying to reverse the curse. We're trying to show you why we're going to have to do this outside the system, why we're going to have to create our own system, why we're going to have to create our own currency, why we're going to have our own land, why we're going to have our own food, right? If not, if you're going to stay in the system, things are going to continue to deteriorate. And how you doing, Brother Dennis, if I didn't say so already? And I've missed you on any of the platforms. Welcome. Thank you for being with us, whether you're joining us live or later on, you're listening, etc. We appreciate you. Thank you for being on all around the world. We're excited to continue to get into this word that the Most High has for us. And thank you for any likes, shares, subscriptions, hitting the notification tab. If you get any donations, if you do anything as far as helping out behind the scenes, any type of effort that you give, energy, etc., even including money that's given to help us with what we do around the world, we're thankful and grateful unto thee. Okay. Now watch this. So once again, we're going to look at, and today we're in a series overall. It's called Reversing the Curse, means revisiting the lie. Today we're focusing on the lie that is called, that is standardization. This is actually part 2. We started talking about standardization yesterday. And Shalom, James, how you doing? Right? Shalom, 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 peace unto everybody. You said, is that why they They want to know your parents' name when you're filing paperwork. It has nothing to do with your parents. Yeah, because what your parents did, they're going to attach it to you. And by the way, that even makes sense to a certain degree. But I'm just trying to show you when somebody says, "Oh no, the past doesn't matter." That's never true. Matter of fact, this is why on your birth, your not well, your birth certificate makes you an artificial person and all that. But when you talk about your DS-11 form, your DS-11 form for your to redo your passport, when we teach you how to do it and we tell you guys to do it in a specific manner, one of the things that's going to help you to make sure that you are considered non-citizen national rather than being called a U.S. citizen is because when you get your passport, one of the things we tell you to do is make sure your parents, whether they thought they were or not, whether they put it down as they were not, you have the right to put down on that paper that they were not United States citizens, right? And what you're doing by that is saying, so when you look at their history, you have to look at their history, which is my history as well, as not being part of an artificial person, because the United States is a corporation, right? If you don't know this, 28 USC 3002-15 subsection A. Once again, 28 USC, that stands for United States Code, so that's law. 28 USC 3002-15 subsection A. Once again, that's 28 USC 3002-15 subsection A tells you explicitly and specifically the United States is a corporation. A corporation isn't considered to be an artificial person. So if you are acting on your birth certificate, which is also a corporation, then you are only, right, you are an artificial person. Matter of fact, when you sign a lot of stuff, your signature is actually the real you, right? Your signature is the real you. So when you sign away, if you notice a lot of times, especially those of us who come from the era where you wrote checks for everything, right? You on your check, it was all caps, just like on your birth certificate. Therefore, it wasn't talking about the you that's signing, the uppercase, first letter, lowercase, rest of the letters, uppercase, first letter, lowercase, rest of the letters. No, it was talking about that's the real you signing, but you were signing, giving permission away for them to do business with the artificial person that they have as a ward. You have basically awarded them to use your ward, right, that your parents awarded them to be able to do business. So this is one of the reasons why at some point, functionally, to do certain things, it's best to make sure that you are looked at as a non-citizen national. Even if not, though, learn how to live as private as possible, because there's a lot of persons who get their paperwork done and still are of the world. And you're supposed to get the paperwork done or do anything you do so that you can be in the world, but what? Not of it, right? Okay. But loan approvals. Let's do this. So once again, we're going to look at the area, how bias appears, and impacts. I'm just going to read through this, by the way. All right, watch this. Here we go. So the area, loan approvals. How bias appears. Higher denial rates despite equal financials. Impact. How does that impact us? Reduced access to credit, fewer opportunities. Any lies? No. Right? Okay. Interest rates. The area we're looking at now, interest rates. How bias appears. Higher rates for black borrowers. Impact. Higher lifetime cost of loans. That also means those of you who are going to school, right? Who went to college, you have loans. If you do the math, you'll realize that a lot of you, just because of the color of your skin, your college loans are higher than others. Okay, but we keep saying we got to go to college. By the way, the only reason why you started going to college was because nobody used to have to go to college. Everybody had a trade, or everybody was segregated, and so we did business amongst ourselves anyways. All of a sudden, you want to start getting more, and you want to start going to a system, and you start trying to force somebody that doesn't like you to say, I want to have access to this. You start saying it's unfair. You start giving them laws and codes. So what do? They say, okay, no problem. We'll say that you have to have more, you have to be better educated. I know. We'll say now you have to have college education, even though on-the-job training always supersedes. But now you have to have college education, right? And we'll only teach certain things in college. We'll go ahead and accredit these schools, but by accrediting them, we'll tell them specifically they have to teach this here, this here, this here, this here. And so we know most of you guys will not even be able to get there. But then we, once again, You bucked the system. You tried really, really hard. We did really, really well. And so we got in their system and we got up to that point. Now all of a sudden, our sisters are the most educated and our brothers ain't that far behind. Now you do Elder Tamara. So now what do? Oh, okay, we don't need college anymore. Now it's not education, it's certification. So now we start chasing certification. We start getting 6, 7, 8 certifications while one person only has 2. Okay, now, you know what? Right, and now you get to a place where what's the argument now? Now it's DEI, now it's AA. See all this stuff. No, like we started doing so well, right? And then especially when some persons actually were like, you know what? Let's be fair. Like we should give them that. Who? I mean, they're only gonna we only have to represent them with 2, 3 persons of color in the whole organization. Anyways, you know, let's go ahead and be fair. Let a few of them get in. When those few get in, and then they might hire some persons that look like them, and then they might hire some women. God forbid, right? And they might hire some, they might hire some persons who are Pakistani. They might hire some persons who are Iranian. Oh my goodness! Like they might hire some persons that are, black, but they're like black African and black Caribbean. Oh my greatness! And so we got to change it again. There you go, moving the goalposts, right? That's right, paying for programming and propaganda, and being in debt, right? So you got to see these, right? These interest rates are higher to get change and stuff, all this stuff. So when you go to this and you're going to school, you're doing all this stuff, we shouldn't even been doing that. How you doing, Prophet Yeoman? We should have been all right with where we were. But we value being like the person at the top rather than being like what Yah told us to be from the inside. Right? Right? What does his word say? Not only greater is he that's in us, but he that's in the world. His word also says, this is one of our affirmations, right? Romans chapter 8, verse 18, that the suffering of this present time is not worthy to be compared to the glory that shall be revealed where? In us. Why do we keep looking up to everybody else rather than looking on the inside? Home appraisals, undervaluation of black home. So this area, home appraisals, right? How bias appears, undervaluation of black-owned homes, impact, lower equity and generational wealth. Area, mortgage underwriting, how bias appears, algorithms trained on bias data. What's the impact? Continuous historical redlining through code. So now you don't have to go in a bank and see somebody put a whole big red line around it. The code does it for you. It still exists, but you can't see it. It's invisible. It's invisible and it's silent. You said during homeschool, when your grandson found out the USA was a corporation, he was looking at you crazy. Yes. So they've been scamming us this whole time. Come on, right? I remind Solomon all the time, money's not real, right? Use it to get something that's real, but it ain't real, right? It's only what you make it. And when that, right? But it's very real when you see on your money those slave owners. Everybody wants them Benjamins. Benjamin Franklin wanted to own you, wanted to force your women down, and wanted to say it was because he was a libertine. He couldn't help himself. Bank access, the area of bank access. How does bias appear? Branches and credit unions. Branches and credit options limited in black neighborhoods. Impact, reduce financial mobility. May I also say, I thought it was going to go somewhere else. May I also just add this in? Reduce financial literacy. Real estate steering, right? That's the area we're talking about now. How does bias appear there? Agents guide buyers away from certain areas. Okay, so if you go to an agent, right? If somebody goes to an agent and they say, I want to buy a home, agents automatically are trained to say, don't go where black persons are. Which means that if somebody could buy a home, if somebody can afford a home, they can afford to sow into your community. So what do? No, we're not going over there. We're not going to sow into the community, right? Also, too, though, what's another impact? Limited neighborhood access. What's another area? Rental housing, right? How does bias appear? Higher deposits, selective background checks. You know that there's a lot of places that you go for these background checks, and some of them they don't have to do it, but because they see the color of your skin, they say background check, right? What's the impact? Reduced housing stability. Can't find a place, can't stay in a place for so long. And when you get there, oh man, mess around, there'll be an accident that happens or something bad happens. You know what, man, these black persons, they always messing up. Now it's time for them to go ahead and renew their lease. We'll come up with something they can't stand. And thank y'all for the love. And how you doing, Miss Caddy? How you doing, Yehuda? Right? Welcome to all. Here's another area: insurance. How bias appears. We just talked about this already. Higher premiums based on zip codes shaped by redlining. If somebody says, put your zip code in, we want to know where you live, right? I found this out quite a few times, right? Here's another thing. I've stopped, maybe if we do something as SOC as a whole, I've stopped doing, I was getting even barak. I was blessed, with what we do where persons were either helping us out or sometimes outright, giving us money to stay in some nice places, depending on who was able to bless us at times where we were, barak us at times where we were. And I stopped. I started telling persons, hey, please. Well, first of all, now that we got the RV, it's not really a big deal, anyways. Praise Yah that we were able to rub them pennies together. But I stopped going to Airbnbs as much, unless it was the SOC thing. Yeah, we were making sure there was something for everybody because basically, like in Philadelphia, especially, last 2 or 3 times I tried to get one over there. They would say yes, and then somebody would see what I look like, and then they would contact me and say, "Oh, you got to fill out some kind of background check." I'm like, "That's not even a thing." And then when I would try and call, guess where they direct you to? No shade. I'm just telling you, this is historically what goes on. I get sent over to India, right, on the phone, and in India, I'm considered to be an untouchable. you know like in India I'm considered to be an untouchable, so they see what I look like, they talk blah blah, and it doesn't matter what or so this has happened in Philly a few times. It happened in New York once. I'm talking about the north, right? It's happened down south quite a bit. It's happened in Virginia around the Monticello area or around Shenandoah area. It happened a little bit in Texas. It happened to us in Georgia. And after a while, I'm just like, when persons are giving us this stuff, not only are we having issues, but now persons who are giving me things, it's taking me forever in the day to not only use the money the person's giving me, but sometimes give it back because we couldn't even use it. So I just stopped, I just stopped doing it because of profile, right? Thought about it because I have enough. I told them, well, they got like 2 more times. I'm trying my best to not be that guy, but I was like, when we use it in the future, if we use it in the future, and a couple more times that happens, you know, I guess we gonna sue because this is clearly like based up like whatever I get, and I've never left anybody's place jacked up. I've never done anything to where their stuff is damaged. Maybe there's a sheet somewhere or something that got some kind of damage or something spilled on or something somewhere. Who knows? But I've never done anything to where somebody could have been like, oh, shoot me 25 or something like that, and I can take care of it. So if this is something that's there, but this is another type of bias. You said untouchable. So in India, I won't spend too much time on this. You can look it up, but I'll just give you some breadcrumbs. And how you doing? Is it French soda? How are you? And if you look in India in their history, before there was even others that came over there, and you have to look at like the Greeks that came over as well, and some other things. So it's not just only the Eurocentric values we think of today, like England and others who actually were over India and Pakistan. Remember, Pakistan and India were one place at one time. That being said, they had 4 sects, sects. They had 4 sects already, sections or sects, right, of persons. And they had like, I can't recall the names of them, but basically I think at the top you have like, I think you have well, I don't know if I'm going in order or not, but you have one sect that's like the rich class, and one that's like the religious, and one that's the warriors, and you have one that was the poor. So within themselves, they already had this stuff, right? Then eventually, they went even deeper to where when persons who held racist white supremacist values came over, then what happens after that is you have this 5th group that gets put on top of that as well, called untouchables, basically black, or even they call it Dalit. Dalit for us is different, but they call it Dalit, right? Dalit, which also should show you something as far as Hebrew and mindset and stuff as well, right? But anyway, but they call it Dalit, and so for Dalit, for us, that's the door, but for them, that's a doorway, that we need to get kicked out the door, so to speak, get mistreated, and so we're the 5th group on the bottom, right? And you even still today, if you look up stuff in Pakistan and in India, I was actually invited to Pakistan. I probably wouldn't go to the place that I was invited to because they probably would come at me and my family a certain way. So even if I did ever do it, I'd have to be like really, really close to the airport, and I'd have to be at a hotel that I know is protected. That being said, yeah, they're very big over there about coming against persons who are of color, especially once the English came over and did what they did, and the CIA came over and did what they did, and all these different things or whatever. So now that still resides. They already had that, so it wasn't that hard for somebody to come over and say, "Oh, you guys already don't like each other, anyways." And now it's become lighter skinned you are, the higher you up, the darker skin you are, the worse off you are. Right? So so basically that's what I was talking about with that. So when I make a call over to them, right, they're looking at my race too. you know, because they've been trained by the same system. That's why I'm making a point to say this is systemic. It doesn't matter as much as you think it is. It doesn't matter the color, because you can still be somebody who looks so-called black, right? Like if you look at just the DNA, right, and blood, so-called Indians, not Native Americans. I'm talking about Indians from India. Indians and Pakistanis are the same as you talking about West Africans. You talking about East Africans. Same people. But don't ever say that to them. And even though we know that the Pakistani and the Indian, literally, if we just go back to the 40s and 50s, we know that they're the same country. Don't tell them they're the same, right? And by the way, this is not something that's new to anything. I mean, if you go to Kush and Kemet, basically you got Kush's big brother, Kemet is little brother. But don't tell them person they're the same. Or look at Ethiopia and Eritrea, both of them are Kush. But don't say that to them. They just in the last few decades started separating Eritrea from Ethiopia. But don't tell them that Eritrea is the same as the Ethiopian. They're not trying to hear none of that, right? Now I'm talking about, obviously, majority. I'm not saying there's no exceptions to that. And how you doing, Cliff? Thanks for being part of the community. How you doing, Zion? So you can see these things that are happening, right? But this is stuff that happened through standardization. It's not just the testing that they standardize. They standardize everything, right? We're focusing on banks right now, but let's continue, right? So and by the way, we talk about all these things. So what are some strategies to protect yourselves from financial bias? What are some strategies that you can do? So we're gonna list off some strategies. I'm not going to add anything to this at all. These are 10 strategies you can use. All praises to the Most High. These are 10 strategies you can use. If you want to write these down, if you want to listen to the recording later, what is this? This is at like the 82-minute mark or so. If you want to go over, so would that be an hour and 22-minute mark? If you go back and look at the recording later on, feel free to do so, right? If you're on the podcast, this is about the hour and 21-minute mark. Okay? So go back and look at this if you get a chance. All right? So these are 10 things. I'm just going to read them off. I'm not going to add, take away anything. You're just going to read them. These are 10 strategies to protect yourself from financial bias. Will it guarantee anything? Not necessarily, but at least it'll help you, right? All right, you ready? 10 strategies. Here we go. Number 1, get multiple loan estimates. Get what? Multiple loan estimates. Get multiple loan estimates. In essence, never accept the first loan. Never accept the first loan. Some of you can, but you got to be really advanced before you do that. Number two, request a full loan estimate in writing to compare fees. Right? So request a full loan estimate. It's also known as an LE. Right? Ask for an LE. You're going for a loan. Request a full loan estimate, LE. Right? Make sure it's in writing so you can compare fees. So when you go and get these multiple estimates, okay, I see in writing they're giving me fees for this. If I can put it like this, those of you who've done hospitals, those of you who've done hotels, right? If you go to one hotel and you look at the fees, maybe you have similar pricings or similar things and stuff like that. But let's say you're going to stay for 5 days and one hotel says, oh yeah, we charge, it's $150 per night, but there's the parking fee and there's a fee for your pet, and there's a fee for this. The other one says, well, there's a fee for your pet, and the fee for your pet is more expensive than the fee over here, but there's no parking fees. You have an opportunity now, right, to look at different options and say which one is best. So think about that with your loan. Same type of thought process. Number 3, challenge low appraisals with a reconsideration of value, or an ROV. ROV, a reconsideration of value. If you ask for a loan and you've looked it up and you know that you deserve more than what they're giving you, then guess what? You can ask for an ROV, right? A reconsideration of value. Number 4, document, and I can't say this enough, record it on your phone, right? I know some places you're not allowed to record it. Fine, record it on your phone. And those of you who like to use AI, have AI then go and give you a transcript of the recording and say that you took the notes, whatever, right? But document all communication with lenders, appraisers, and agents. Every single communication you have, document it all, right? With lender, if you're talking to a lender, an appraiser, or even an agent. Number 5, avoid dealer financing for cars. Avoid dealer financing for cars. Use pre-approved bank loans. I can tell you that the last car that I made payments on, right, that we have paid off some years ago now, praise Yah. If I do get a car, it's going to be off an auction, or it's going to be from buying it from somebody I know and I trust, or something like that, right? But I can tell you, even on that last one, the dealer seemed like it was cheaper per month. But, right, went through the bank, right, or actually the credit union at the time. Went through the credit union, everything was a lot better, right? It ended up being shorter. And even though it was more expensive, it was shorter. There was a lot less interest in certain things. There was a lot less fees, right? Look at all that stuff. Number 6, check whether you qualify for a conventional mortgage before accepting FHA. Also, too, here's another one if you guys can. Look up the NACA program, right? That's one of the best things that will ever help. We didn't even use ours. Right, we went through the whole process. NACA actually will make sure that you are qualified. That's their goal, is to qualify you no matter how bad your stuff is, to make sure that everybody gets homes. So NACA will get to a place to where they see if they can get you an apartment building, if they can get you a little apartment complex, or whatever you call those 4-part apartment complexes, whatever you call those. Please forgive me, I'm forgetting what those are. They'll see if they can get you a house, they'll see if they can get you this, that, whatever. But they'll work on your behalf, and they'll literally clean up your credit. They'll get you. They know all the places to go. That's another one too. NACA, NACA. Right. We went through all the stuff. They helped us to get basically everything down and everything off the credit. Right. Like within less than a month. All we did was follow instructions. And you might run into, by the way, if you use NACA, some of them cats, they're gonna be hard to deal with, but listen to them. Even if they yell at you a little bit, listen to them, because they're dealing with stress. They're dealing with everybody's stuff. They got sometimes 20, 30 persons they're trying to help out at a time. But listen to them and support them, by the way. When they barak you, when they give you what you need, support them. All right? Number seven, use credit unions and community banks with better fairness records. All right? Look up fairness records. Look up, hey, what have they done to others in times past? Just like, once again, when you go to look at a hotel and you see this one is 9 stars, this one is 8 stars, this one is, no, not 9 stars, it's a 9 rating, it's an 8 rating, it's a 10 rating, so it's just a 2 rating, right? And then you look, but even if it's a 2 rating, you might want to look up, oh, okay, only 2 persons said something, and it seems like these 2 persons really are connected to the same thing. But then when I look up other things on another site, right, oh, okay, it seems like this might actually be a great place. Let me look up even further information, right? Do your research, right? Okay, here's another one. You ready? Number 8, regularly, this one right here is something that I need to do way more. Regularly freeze your credit to prevent score manipulation. Number 8, what? Regularly freeze your credit to prevent score manipulation. Look it up if you don't know what freezing your credit even is. Right? Look that up. Right? Regularly freeze your credit to prevent score manipulation. You can do that because your credit score is always being manipulated. All right. Number 9, bring an advocate or financial advisor to real estate negotiations. My brother, my sister, I could not tell you how little we think about showing up somewhere with somebody who has more knowledge than us, or making sure at least somebody's on the phone. Make sure that you have an advocate. Make sure you have, if you can, a confidant, but definitely at least a constituent of somebody. But make sure you have somebody who's an expert at this thing, a financial advisor. Have them show up. If you're gonna buy a home anyways, somebody's like, oh, well, a financial advisor is trying to charge me like, $150 an hour and stuff. $150 an hour ain't nothing if you're talking about trying to get a home and maybe have the financial advisor save you $100, $200, $300,000. You see that? So make sure, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't think in the short term. Don't think in the temporary, as we've been taught. Think long term. Think eternity, right? Think long term. Number 10, last one, at least for this part. Report discriminatory behavior to HUD, to HUD, to CFPB, or state regulators. So report it to HUD, to CFPB, or state regulators. Because yes, you have the right to report things. Sometimes we're like, it's never going to break. That's why we teach one of the things we teach in sovereignty is keep going. Don't give up. All right? Don't give up. Now we're going to get into scripture now. Scripture that addresses unjust economic systems and unequal treatment. All right? Once again, now let's go into scripture that directly addresses unjust economic systems and unequal treatment. Right? And I know this isn't the normal praise y'all, this is fire, run around, slap 7 people, and da-da-da. But this is truth. And how you doing, Dominique? Shalom to you. Right? You said you need info on purchasing without SSN and income tax. Yeah, using your EIN. You get your EIN set up, and then you use your EIN as a distribution vehicle. You use the EIN as the vehicle, right? If you will. Right? The EIN itself can be a vehicle. Some of you are going to do LLC. I don't really do LLC or trust, right? I recognize the value of some of it, but you must recognize the trust in the LLC are still artificial persons. So just make sure when you get into all that. Some of you might require trust. We're just not going to become an LLC or a trusted SOC. But we're already, a nonprofit, and we're already considered to be a religious organization. Right? But it depends on what you're doing. You gotta know where you're headed. So that's why we always say sovereignty is not one size fits all. It's not. Okay. So watch this. So scripture that directly addresses what we're dealing with in this economic system and stuff. We're gonna look at some scripture real quick and some things that are happening, right? And all these things. And by the way, they're condemned. So let's look at, first of all, the scripture that condemns it. But if it condemns it, it means that we need to also have a mindset that somebody will try to do this to us. Right? It means it's unlawful. If it's condemned, it means it's the spirit of sin. It's the law of sin and not the law of the spirit, right? In other words, persons have put their flesh on the law and made it legal. But not everything that is legal is lawful. Not everything that's lawful is legal. All right, here we go. Everybody catch that? Right? There are persons who are taking what the law says, what the biblical law says, and they're making it legal. But not everything that's legal is lawful. And not everything that's lawful is legal. Are you with me, beloved? Sorry for making all this noise on YouTube. Okay. Right. Once again, we're looking at some stuff, and we're in the middle of a whole series called Reversing the Curse, means revisiting the lie. Right. And in this series, we're making it a point to talk about the last couple of days and possibly tomorrow as well, focusing on standardization. So this is like part 2 within a whole series, right? But we're talking about standardization. And these are important things that we're learning, very important. I'm sorry, you said repeat number 10. Number 10, report discriminatory behavior to HUD, HUD, or to CFPB, or state regulators, right? HUD or CFPB or state regulators. A lot of persons don't know. HUD is there for a reason. Housing and Urban Development. Right. Matter of fact, Elder Maya has quite a bit of experience with that as well, with some things that she's done over the years. But yeah, when you're dealing with housing, urban development, the same thing that Ben Carson was over, and now the other black person in the cabinet this time through, they put him in it. But yeah, you can report these things to them. And a lot of you, by the way, who are getting your housing, if you're getting housing through the government, especially if it's federal housing, you're getting money through them, and a lot of these states have to go through them as well. Then HUD is who you contact. Baba Kasha, it's my pleasure. Right. Okay, so here's some scripture. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1. Everybody ready? Let's do this. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 1. First, let's start there. Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1. Here's some ways we can start looking at even biblical things and things that are condemned considering the word. And if you, by the way, are convicted by any of this, right, that means that you are somebody who's dealing with being outside the law. You're not convicted of anything unless you've committed a crime, right? You could be arrested for something and still not be convicted, right? But if this is convicting you, right, don't take this personal. Don't be like, oh, okay, they're just talking bad about me, yada yada. No, if you are convicted by this, what our prayer is that you make a change. If you didn't know about some of this stuff, or if you know about it and know that it's time to come out of it, and if the Most High has been showing you for a long time through the Vakakodash that it's, we need to be better, and we need to come out of this, and we need to stop making excuses, and stop acting like we have to stay in this because we have no other alternative. The time is now. Once again, we're developing as a nation. That's what the commandment is. It's not for us to just have an assembly, have a service, have church, whatever. It's time for us to do better, to come out. Come out of her, right? Rise. Right? So that's what the goal of this really truly is. So I'm not trying to come in anybody or trying to make anybody feel bad or anything like that. I'm just trying to give you some things that will help you out. So Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1, watch this. And this is written by King Solomon, wisest man to ever live outside of Yahshua, right? So here we go. You ready? And how you doing, babe? My wife is on, the Honorable Maya. As always, check her out on TikTok, YouTube, website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. By the way, do not forget, sisters, that you have tonight, this evening, Friday evening, 7 p.m. New York time. It'll be women's meetings. So if you'd like to join for that, please feel free to join up with her as you guys continue in what Yahweh has for you leading up to Women in Red, which will be December 27th. But tonight at 7 p.m. New York time, feel free to join Elder Maya. And thank you, babe, for being on. Thank you for all that you do around the world. Alrighty. So scripture, Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1. It says this, it says, a false balance, abomination, or a false balance is abomination to Yahweh. But a just weight is his delight. Did you catch that? I'm going to say it again. A false balance is what? We talk about abominations all the time. A false balance is abomination to Yahweh, but a just weight is his delight. Wait a minute. So if money's not real, but you think that because you have money, you're doing something, that is an abomination. Uh-oh. Right? Does anybody have anything different? This is in your Bible. For those of you who believe in the Bible and use it as your standard. Right? I do as well. But I'm just saying, if we're going to live by it, a false balance. A what? A false balance. It's not correct. Now, we have to do Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1. Now, we have to look at, first of all, what we're talking about. How did they write? What is the time? Who are they writing to? What was the mindset? When you were trying to trade, you would put it on a scale and you would try to see, it didn't always have to match up, but you wanted to see what the balance was, right? Sometimes there were times where salt, depending on what you needed it for, might be the same value as gold. And so you might want the same level of salt, right, to be the weight of gold, right? But if somebody were to falsify or mess up the balance, to mess up the scale, then we get what's called a false balance. Hmm. That means somebody's lying to you on purpose. They're telling you something that isn't really balanced. They're telling you that really, if we were to make the machine right, we would discover that the machine really is like this. For those of you that did the watch party with us when we went over the, I forget what the name of it is, but we went over the one about Joseph, right, with the coat of many colors. That Joseph, and we went over and we did that watch party, and we saw that scene. That was a really great indicator where Joseph catches the guy. It didn't really happen, but they were just trying to show you things that maybe might have made um, Potiphar maybe trust Joseph more, right? And they had that scene where they showed that something was wrong, and Joseph noticed, well, wait a minute, like when they took the stuff off, the thing was unbalanced. So he was like, no, you gave him exactly what you were supposed to. But persons would try to play you like that. They would realize that, see, when we talk about balance, a lot of times now we only think about balance and make sure, but balance is something that's necessary in finance. See, I'm never truly balanced because I tell persons like this, I don't want to be as evil as I want to be righteous. I don't want to be righteous on Tuesday. Up, better balance it out. Be right. You be evil on Wednesday. There's some persons that teach you that yin and yang principle. Some persons actually take it to that level, right? But balance as far as finance, and a lot of times it's mandatory. And if somebody is doing something weird with the balance, right? So if once again we talked about discrimination, if I come in with the same thing that somebody else does, and you say no, I can't trust that balance because you're so-called black. Yah says that's an abomination. Uh-oh. Right? See, we let's have honest dialogue, right? It's always interesting. We have so much scripture about finance, and yet we don't apply it or look at it. Yeah, it's morally false. It's lying. And all these scriptures that persons bring out, usually the only scripture we'll bring out about any kind of finance is how to make sure you can put money in your pocket. But the scripture has a lot of stuff talking about how you should do business and how you should treat things. There's a lot of scripture about how we should do business and how we should do it ethically, morally, etc. Right? And so once again, Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1. Right? Let's look at this thing that just says an abomination. I'm just reading Proverbs 11, verse 1. It says, a false balance is abomination to Yahweh, but a just weight. Weight can also mean glory as well, by the way. But a just weight is his delight. When your finances are balanced, when we treat each other respectfully, financially, when we have our stuff together, it is his delight. But when we keep looking to a system that is unjust to be our barometer, and now we take the same things that they do and do them to one another, Yah says it is an abomination. Mm. Is that in your Bible? Proverbs chapter 1? Sorry, Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1, excuse me. Is that there? That's a financial abomination. And yet, we'll rob, the saying is, we'll rob Peter to pay Paul. Are we supposed to rob Peter to pay Paul? Are we supposed to always be in a position, like think about how many times that we have bought things that watch this, we don't even want to go here. How many times have we bought things that we do not need? And we'll put value on the unnecessary, we'll value it on the same level as the necessary. And we'll even use words. We've been taught to do this. We'll use words like, I gotta have that. I need that. I must have that in my home. Like they taught you to love Coke. I love Coke. How you love Coca-Cola? Right? But it's the same thing. Man, the PS5 is coming out. That PS6 is coming out. Brothers, that PS6 is coming out. Or that new, what's the new, Nintendo DS2 is out. Or the Or what's the one that they trying to bring back? You know, I'm too. I'm obviously not a gamer anymore. Microsoft, my Xbox. Xbox is coming out with a new one. Right, exactly. I deserve it. I deserve to have it. All the stuff I've been through, all this hell I've been going through, all these sayings we like to say. I deserve this. If anybody deserves this, I deserve it. Be careful, beloved. See, the standardization of money, the standardization of capitalism, the standardization of the more I have, the better I am. The standardization of these things has caused us to go against the word. Because once again, Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1 says, a false balance is abomination to Yahweh, but a just weight is his delight. Can we say that we have made sure that we have made financially balanced decisions? Come on, my wife said, Elder Maya said, when we say I deserve, then we deserve the consequences of compulsive buying. This is part of coming out of the world, coming out of the system. This is financial abomination. We love to shots fired. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, take it off. Right? You have your vest on, right? But I'm just saying, right? I'm looking at this for myself. I could be better. I could put up more things. Right? There's impulse buys, or we make decisions. I've talked about this before. We be on the road, and I know I'm not supposed to be having no soda and stuff like that, but it gets too hard sometimes to get coffee that's actually healthy, or someone would be blah blah whatever and this like that, and it is difficult sometimes. All we have to do is really pull over to the side of the road and rest. But you need to make up time. You're running late. You're doing this. So guess what? You make an excuse, and then all of a sudden you start telling everybody, "Oh yeah, I'm not really a sugar fiend. Wait a minute, how much soda have I been drinking?" Right? These are things that are impulse. How much when I was like a chain smoker, I can't even imagine. I can't even tell you. I never kept track of how much them cartons really cost and how much it cost me over years. Somebody came to me one day like, "Shoot, you smoking 4 packs, three packs a day when you stressed out, 4 packs a day, might as well just get a carton. You'll save money." I'm not saving no money, and I'm not saving my body. And guess what? When I got more, I smoked more. Mm. Not trying to come to you, man. I'm just trying to tell the truth. We gotta do better. Mm-hmm. This financial abomination is messing us up. Yah says it's not just wrong, he calls it an abomination. That's Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1. Did anybody, by the way, was that different than anybody else's Bible? Yeah, let's go. Let's go ahead and have some real talk in here. Let's get this in because we gonna go. Let's go here. Let's really do this. Next one up, Proverbs chapter 20, verse 23. You said the laws of addiction. Hey, Proverbs chapter 20, verse 23. Let's go there. Proverbs chapter 20, verse 23. Because there's a way out. And Yah had already foresaw this. In his wisdom, he made sure King Solomon put this out there just for you and I. See, we didn't know this was talking about finance. We just read through this real quick. See, now we can get this. Now that we got Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1, let's hit Proverbs chapter 20, verse 23. This is amazing, right? Praise Yah. Right, watch this. Diverse weights, balance, scale. Same thing it was just talked about in Proverbs 11, verse 1, right? Diverse weights, many different things that you're putting on there on that scale are an abomination unto Yahweh. And a false balance is not to buy. Oh my greatness. Basically saying the same thing, but saying a little different. Now this time it says diverse weights. There's a whole lot of different things that we're putting on there. There's a whole lot that we're putting on there. And instead of diversifying our portfolio, we're diversifying and getting all these different things. Diverse weights. Look at this now. Are an abomination unto Yahweh. You got so much stuff on there, trying to do whatever you can. And now if you put in the more diverse stuff you put on this side of the scale, you got to balance it out. Now you got to put more money up for it. It is not to buy. It's a false balance because a lot of this stuff is not worth the money that you're paying for it. It's not even in your purpose. Ooh, Holy Spirit. Look, could I just throw this out there real quick? If it's not for your purpose, then it's not for your wallet. Mm. Mm-hmm. Come on. If it's not for your purpose, it's not for your wallet. If we live by that, game over for this foolishness. A lot of our debt goes away tomorrow. I won't say it goes away, but it starts to go away. How about that? Right? But some of the stuff that we're putting ourselves in debt, if it's not for our purpose, it's not for your wallet. Either making sure that I eat healthy. If not, I shouldn't be getting it. I raise my hand. Right? If it's not going to make sure that I can do what I need to do in the time that I've been given, then I shouldn't be getting it. Sometimes the time that you've been given is supposed to be for fun. It is supposed to be relished. It is for you to go on vacation. It is, but there's sometimes where we're getting so. Sometimes we're paying for vacations and we can't pay our bill. But I deserve it, right? We've been taught pay for the 6-figure wedding, but don't buy a 5-figure home. Oh, come on. No, I'm just saying. Come on. You know I ain't lying. Persons out there paying for the 6-figure wedding can't afford the 5-figure home and say, I don't want the 5-figure home because the 5-figure home I had to put work into and stuff. Man, for $40,000, $50,000, you can go ahead and get a home. It might not be the home of your dreams, but it'll be the home that y'all can use to get you to the home of your dreams and make sure that you put some money in your pocket and save. You know, all that money that you say you don't have that you had to pay on the wedding, and now you're in debt because a lot of you had to take a loan out to get the wet stuff for the wedding so that you could have the big, huge wedding that everybody could go ahead and say something about, but you were never even trained on what a husband and a wife was. So now all of a sudden, 2 years later, that wedding doesn't matter because now you got the divorce. You still don't even have a home. And had you had a home, it probably would have been easier for you guys to go ahead and get along and not have as many fights about money. You know, if you had done it Yah's way. Mm. See, we're made in the image of Yah. Doesn't Genesis 1:27 say we need to be, Genesis 1:26 through 28, really, we need to do things the way he would do them, in his image. If it's not something that is his image, then why are we doing it? If it's not his food, why are we eating it? If it's not his drink, why are we partaking? If it's not his algorithm, why are we looking for it on the algorithm? Yeah, not all that glitters is gold. And how you doing, new one? We have all these different excuses and all these different reasons to allow ourselves to continue to go down this foolishness of marginalizing our own community and our own selves. Now, once again, I've talked about, redlining and all these different things. I'm not saying this stuff doesn't exist, but what I'm not going to do is act like we have no part to play in this demise. Because this is word. This is right here. Just because we don't live by it doesn't mean that this word doesn't exist. Right? Just because you say the emperor has clothes on doesn't mean that he ain't buck naked. Okay? Let's go to something. It's called unequal weights and measures. Okay? Unequal weights and measures. When banks charge so-called black borrowers higher interest or undervalue their homes, it is the modern form of dishonest scales. It's a sin, explicitly, as we just read, condemned in Terach or Torah, in the guide, in our doctrine. When banks charge us because of the color of our skin higher interest and then undervalue our homes because of the color of our skin in our neighborhoods and where they're located, it's nothing more than the modern form of dishonest or unbalanced scales, right? Diverse even scales. When they do this to us, this is against the law. So at some point, we have to start coming into our own and building our own, because if we keep going to them, we're going to persons who practice things that they have made legal, but things that Yahweh has always told us are unlawful. Right? Another thing, oppression, right? If we talk about this oppression that we have through the economic gatekeeping. These gatekeepers who run us out. We have Isaiah chapter 10. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 10. Let's read Isaiah 10. We're going to read Isaiah 10, verses 1 and 2, I believe. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 10. We're going to read verses 1 and 2. Come on. Everybody with us? Isaiah chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. Come on, somebody. Right? This isn't the easiest thing. This isn't the easiest thing to stay awake for, but we got to recognize. Now, this is scripture. This is ways we can change this. This is what the Bible says, right? We're dealing with persons who are gatekeeping. All right, Isaiah chapter 10, verse 1 and 2. What does it say? It says, woe. That means curse, by the way. Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed. These contracts and stuff you under. Once again, Isaiah chapter 10, verse 1 starts off with, woe. That means curse is coming unto them. You better stay clear of that. You better not do business how they do business. Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless. We have a whole bunch of stuff just happened there. So if we're looking at this, we're seeing that our men are being wiped out. The sisters are being attacked once their men are gone, and the children have no chance. Right? They rob the poor of their rights. Matter of fact, don't even tell you what your rights are. Right? They don't tell you what your rights are, right? They're robbing you. And they're using these biased tools. You feel it as a single mom? Come on, right? They're using these biased lending tools to operate as these decrees that are unlawful. These are unlawful decrees, things that they're writing out. Now we don't have access to the land. We don't have access to credit. We don't have access to stability because that's what their system demands. Before we even go into there, let's go to old tried and true Proverbs. Before we go even further in these notes, let's go to Proverbs chapter. Sorry, I said Proverbs. Oh my greatness. Psalm, the 172nd division of Psalms, or Psalm 122. Right, and we're going to read straight through Psalm 123. Psalm 122, verse 1. Psalm 122, verse 1. All right, going all the way through Psalm 123, verse 4. It says this. It says, I was glad. Now, right? We know this, but we don't read through this. We don't know how revolutionary these verses are. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the Bait, or the house of Yahweh. Our feet, we got to find out who our is. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Yahushalam, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is builded as a city that is compact together, that must come together. That's how we're built. Verse 4 of Psalm 122, whither the tribes go up, the tribes of Yahweh, unto the testimony of Yahweh, right? Or the branches, the nations go up. We as the sub-nations of the nation of Israel, we got to go up towards what? Towards the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of Yahweh. For there are set thrones of judgment. Here we go. We just read Isaiah chapter 10, verse 1 and 2, where it said that these persons are not getting proper judgment because they're not going to Yah, and all these things are having us be judged, including our credit and everything else, through all these things that they're writing for us. Okay, we're supposed to look for the judgment of Yahweh. For there are set thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David, so is the house of Judah. Pray for the peace of Yahweh Shalom. Pray for what? For the peace of those of us who are coming together, that they shall prosper that love thee, that shall prosper that love Yahweh. Peace, or even really technically this word thee actually is that they pray for your people right? Who love you. Why do you keep going to everybody else who doesn't love you, right? And verse 7, peace be within thy walls. Make sure within this community that we build, there's peace and prosperity within thy palaces. And where we live, in our homes should be like palaces. Let's make sure that there's prosperity, that we have the ability to push within these places. For my brethren, for my family, our companions and companions' sakes, I will now say, peace be within thee. That's why we greet each other with shalom. It's a huge thing for us. And if somebody doesn't give us peace back, we will leave and wipe the dust from our feet because they're not part of Yahweh Shalom. Because of the house of Yahweh, our Elohim, will I seek thy tabah. Will I seek, since you are my brother, the house of Yahweh, I will seek what is righteous for you. Does that sound like what these persons are doing for us? No. Let's keep on going. Psalm 123, verse 1. It says, unto thee I lift up mine eyes, O thou that dwellest in the heavens. Chanayah, pay attention. Behold, as the eyes of servants look unto the hand of their teachers or their masters, and as the eyes of the maiden look into the hand of her mistress, right? Which, by the way, that's a European concept. They would have been the hands of their mistress. It would have been the hands of the wife of the master of the house, right? But anyway, so our eyes wait upon Yahweh, our Elohim, until that we have mercy upon us. Have mercy upon us, Yahweh. Have mercy upon us, for we are exceedingly filled with contempt. There is a standardization that's out there that has allowed us to be filled with contempt for ourselves rather than realize who we are as Yahweh Shalom, right? Our soul, our nachivash, our psychology even, is exceedingly filled with the scorning of those that are at ease. There are persons who have created a system to where they are more at ease with us being scorned, with us being on the bottom, with us being nothing. Therefore, and with contempt of the proud, there are persons that take pride in the fact that they have helped you to feel contempt for yourself, and that you will keep running to them, believing that their legal system is more powerful than Yahweh's lawful system. Okay, right? So when we talk about different things like generational wealth and biblical land principles, Torah established, watch this, Jubilee. You know about Jubilee, right? Jubilee is a system for preventing permanent economic oppression, redlining, and appraisal bias directly, right? I'm sorry. So Jubilee was designed as a system for preventing permanent economic oppression. Jubilee was a system. This is in our system in the kingdom. Jubilee, right? Every 50th year, no matter what, even if persons have found a way to manipulate this, every 50th year, everything went back to zero. Nobody can be in debt because anybody that's in debt is a slave, and anybody that's a slave is in debt. I'm pretty sure many of you have gone past 50 years of debt. Many of you have been in debt for things that you shouldn't have been in. How is it that you got educated to become better, and somehow, some way that made you a slave to your educator? Salah. Oh my greatness, Holy Spirit. Did you hear that? I feel like I'm waking up a little bit. That thing got me in my shundo. Right? Right? And thank you for the love, babe. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for this help that you've given me. Right? I'm gonna say it again. This is hard to say. And it's gonna be hard for a lot of persons to hear. And a lot of us are gonna say, oh no, this can't really be for us. And you'll keep it pushing, right? But I'm gonna say the same thing again, right? How is it that you went to get an education, and by going to get an education, you ended up in debt? When anybody that's in debt is a slave. Anybody that's a slave is in debt. How is it righteous that you went to get an education to better yourself and to work for their system and to help them? And by doing so, somehow, some way, by being ready to help establish them, you have now become a slave unto them. Thank you for sharing the live. I see you. Thank you. Right? Doesn't make sense. Or it doesn't make kingdom sense. Commoners think like that. But I'm not going to speak to the commoner. I'm speaking to the kingdom sovereign. I'm not speaking to the common citizen. You went to school And your education caused you to become an educated slave. When we come to Yah, we're supposed to be made free, right? The truth shall make, right? The truth is the truth, and the truth shall what? Make us or create in us or bara in us what? Freedom. But you go into the system, and the system is there to allow you to continue to be enslaved. How is it that you got educated K through 12? How is it that you got educated in going for your associates and your baccalaureate and your master's and your doctorate and in all those classes, except for maybe back in the day? I think I'm pretty sure actually. Matter of fact, I'm 100% now that my memory is working the way it needs to. I'm 100% sure. I think the only time in school anybody taught us to write a check was one day in home economics, if that even exists for schools now. A lot of them got rid of it. And I know in boot camp, they taught us how to write a check one time. I believe my mother had me write checks for her. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just knew where stuff went. But I didn't know that that MP on that check, because that's not a line that you're signing on, those are micro words, and that you're supposed to know what that micro print says. Nobody taught me that. Nobody taught me that my name was in all caps, or that really, her name at the time, but my name was in all caps. And so that name that's in all caps, that means that that's not really who I am. And when I signed that thing, all caps to the riverbank, so that the currency can flow, right? That I'm allowing that currency to flow. Everything's dammed up, stopped up until I basically sign away, and the dam is there for at least, it's designed to release some of that so that some of that can flow, right? We literally were taught to be oppressed. But in the Bible, we have something called Jubilee. Every 50th year for us is supposed to be a time of Jubilee. I'm not sure when we're actually going to do the first one, because to be honest, it doesn't seem like any of us actually really know where Jubilee is supposed to fall. I'm thinking, I've been praying about it. It looks like it might be for us, because by then prayerfully we'll have a lot of stuff like done with the land and everything, and so we'll have a lot of pressure off of us. And so it looks like it'll probably be maybe 2030-ish. I know that's a ways away for some of you, but some of you're going to be with us anyways. So when we get there, we're going to do an official like celebration of Jubilee, but we have to get to a place where we even recognize how law works. See, the Jubilee was there to make sure that nobody could go into economic oppression. Every 50th year, you had to get rid of it. As a matter of fact, the character 50 is the character that makes 50 is the character Navan or none, right? And Navan or non or none, depending on your dialect, it means to be perfected. So every 50th year, to be perfected, everybody has to come out of debt. If you're talking about walking in the kingdom and coming into a newness, you got to be out of debt, or at least we got to start working towards getting out of debt. That's the way that works. That's biblical. So if we come in a system that has redlining or code redlining or algorithmic biased redlines, right? This violates the principle. It has you concentrating on so-called wealth, even though wealth is not even just money. Wealth is how you feel. Wealth is what your family's up to. Wealth is knowing who you are. A lot of us have been taught that money's more real than wealth. Persons that are wealthy, right? They have time. Time is part of wealth. The more time one has to put it into what they've been called to do, that's part of wealth. By the way, even before Jubilee, in our culture, technically every 3 years, your contracts should be set up to where you don't have to be in them, or maybe the most every 6 to 7 years, and every 7th year, we make sure that you're out. But if somebody finds a way to finesse past that, or they keep making you come back over and over again, when you start accruing debt, you become a slave to that person. So every 50th year, no matter what, we're supposed to wipe it out. That's right. A healthy person is a wealthy person, right? A healthy marriage is a wealthy marriage. A healthy mind is a wealthy mind. A healthy culture is a wealthy culture. All right, right. What about when we're invited or called to righteous stewardship? Hey, how you doing, Washi Blossom? Ama? Of course, always, no problem. Hopefully, all has been well, right? And once again, for all our sisters, as a reminder, this evening at 7 p.m. New York time, women's meeting with Elder Maya before the live session. So if you can join 7 p.m. New York time on Zoom, we'll try to put the information out on the Google Calendar invite. Well, with, well, actually, it's already it's going to be put out. It's already set up, so it'll be put out on the Google Calendar invite for you guys, and also we'll make sure that we send it on the text train for those of you we have your information for. Okay, all right, here we go with even more. You ready? All right, number. So next one up. Call to righteous stewardship. Communities are called or invited to protect one another from exploitation. This means reclaiming economic agency through education, cooperative ownership, and advocacy. In other words, this is spiritual work, right? Spiritual work that should manifest into physical work. Okay, now watch this. If it's communities that are called to protect one another from being exploited by all these cats out there, then one of the things that we should recognize and realize very quickly is what? Is that we should protect each other. Now, there's something that we don't like to use because we only think about the negative side of it, but, gentrification. It is all right to make your neighborhood look and feel like you. That is not a sin, right? Now, to make your neighborhood look and feel like you at the expense or at taking the life of somebody else, right? That's when we have a problem. But it is all right for us to say, we will make our homes look like Israel. It is all right for us to say, we shall wear our culture. It is all right for us to say, we shall wear our hair. It is all right for us to do these things. This also means it is all right for us to say, we shall spend our money in house. See, this is one of the biggest things that we do. And by the way, may I tell you, look, FD Signifier and Lil Bill and all these cats out there, I have respect for what these cats do. I'm not on the same level of them as far as numbers and all that stuff. I really do have respect, and well, for the most part, I genuinely believe that they mean well for our people. Lil Bill more so than FD Signifier to me, but regardless, I really do believe that persons like that mean well for our people, right? Even a lot of these persons that are social commentators that are trying to, Reese Waters, persons of that ilk, a lot of different persons out there. I really truly do believe a lot of them really mean well. They have righteous intent, even if they're not being righteous. I believe they really do have righteous intent. That being said, if we're going to become a nation, right, we have to make sure it looks like what Yah says it looks like. And I've said this before, it's so odd to me. It's not even odd, it's kind of interesting to me. It's kind of funny to me that everybody's like, yeah, we're going to go against this store now. We're going to not support Thanksgiving, and we're not going to support Christmas, and we're going to make sure Easter's bad next year, and we're not going to vote. And it's like, all that stuff is in the Bible. You shouldn't have been doing it in the first place. That's righteous stewardship. The same thing that you guys got on us about all this time, telling us, see, you guys, y'all look as crazy and you're in a cult and blah, blah. Now all of a sudden you need it. Now you're jumping on board. I can't really rock with you because as soon as the system that you say is bad gives you just a smidge of what it is that you say that you want, you're going to go ahead and back off. Meanwhile, you're going to leave the rest of us to be in the same position so that you can just jump on board. You guys are just as problematic as the so-called white man. I know not all white persons. I'm just saying, right? That's why I said the so-called, okay? I say so-called a lot to make it a point that I'm not necessarily saying everybody or what people call it, blah, blah. But hear what I'm saying. You guys are so anti-white this and anti-white because they're anti-black this and they're anti-black that, and you guys support this stuff. Lil Bill, after saying all this stuff, I saw this man talking about how his Christmas was going to be great for his children, and he was born with Hebrew Israelite values. Right? He literally was born and raised, and he knows it's wrong, and he'll tell you. And even if he doesn't want to be a Hebrew Israelite, he says he believes in a higher power. He knows that a lot of stuff has been whitewashed. He knows that he's not supposed to, but he's still going to do it anyway. Well, at some point, bro, I mean, if you don't get right back to the system that you said that you're supposed to be against, then what's the point of all that? You playing. right? This will probably never reach your ears, at least not for a long time, because I'm not on your level numbers wise yet to even for you to pay attention to me, right? Unless somebody send it to them. I don't care if you do. I'm just saying, right? If this never reaches your ear, but prayerfully somebody says it to you at some point, like you still supporting the system. Bruh, y'all, FD signifier. I like a lot of stuff they had. Sometimes, bruh, you be annoying to me, to be honest with you. But, because you really don't, as much as you say that you are not, well, actually, you even admitted in your videos, you are problematic too. So I guess you're not even mad at that statement as much. That being said, I appreciate a lot of stuff. You've taught me a lot of different things. I've seen things I never would have seen if it wasn't for you pointing them out. And even with you showing things that I disagree with, I'm thankful that at least I see the other side, right? So I can see it. That being said, bro, you can't sit up there and keep talking about because you have a degree that now you're better equipped to be able to teach our people when the persons that gave you a degree, I don't care if it's from an HBCU or not, they all are persons who literally have to cape to the same system. And all these HBCUs, they started off by basically, they were all started by persons who you say are the enemy. Howard, that's started by the enemy. Look at the names of these schools. Look at for a while, not now anymore. It's changing, but for a while, every medical school that somebody had to go to, the big medical schools, the big time names that you went through around the country, all of them were started by persons who were literally part of a family, right? What was it? Not the Rothschild family. Which one? I think it was the Rockefeller family. Started all those schools. Every single HBCU. Every single HBCU. At some point, you got to be willing to step outside of that and stop using that as a determining factor. I'm not saying, look, I got a degree too. I'm not one of these guys that got more degrees than a thermometer, but I got a degree too. Once again, there's 360 degrees in a circle, though. There's 33 degrees even for a Mason. To have one degree of knowledge is not to have enough. And to come from that degree saying that that degree has to be something that agrees with somebody who literally created the system to be against you, that's standardization. You have been standardized even in the mindset to a place where you believe that you're supposed to put that above your own people and above your own nation. And once again, when we say our people are anybody who follows the word and has been grafted and will connect properly and has become part of the family. So before somebody even says, because I know today I haven't made it as nice as far as defending everybody, blah, blah. But I'm talking about when I say the people of Yah, the people of Yah is not just because you're blacker than black, because you can be blacker than black and still not be Israel. Right? Negro doesn't mean all black people. Look it up. All right. Here's another thing. What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to restore peace. We're supposed to restore shalom. Shalom. So if we're going to restore it, then does financial discrimination against us restore us, or does it continue to fracture us? Can you restore your community through a racist bank? Can you gentrify, right? Can you righteously gentrify your community through a bank that hates the Negro? Can you righteously gentrify your community through a bank that hates women? Can you righteously gentrify your community through an LLC that hasn't made sure that its trust or its LLC, or I'm sorry, the trust or LLC, that the trustor, right, who has made everything up, right, has made sure that the beneficiary, first of all, is Yah, and then secondly, is his people. It doesn't matter if you have an LLC, if your LLC is not built on the word of Yah, because that means it still goes to the same system of oppression. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Man, there's so much stuff here. We might have to go through this all the way through Sunday. Okay, hold on. Okay. Yeah, we might have I don't know. Okay. No, let me stay on track. I think we'll be able to do this through tomorrow. We still got a little bit of time left today. All right. So we talked about banking system, but we can see clearly there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes with it, correct? Right? All right. So here's some other stuff. It goes deep. The well goes deep. I keep thinking this is gonna be this ain't surface level. None of this is for real. But we try to do as much as we can on the surface. That's why we do so much stuff outside of this, because there's other things. Ta-da, law, yeah, of course. All right. So watch this. So here's another one. systemic bias across all domains, right? We already talked about finance and stuff, so I won't bring that up again, but let's just hit some stuff real quick. Okay, you ready? Overcoming bias in medicine and healthcare, right? Black women don't feel pain. OBGYN was started because of what they experimented on in our sisters with the so-called father of medicine, right? Our children were literally hit, our newborn babies were hit in the head, and there was a 0% survival rate, but they were trying to prove that they could hit us in the head and get our brains to be more subservient and therefore better for racism and white supremacy, right? They literally aborted babies to experiment upon them. And now Margaret Sanger and others, Margaret Sanger, who also who literally is a eugenicist, right? Can I just throw this in here real quick? Yeah, we scratching. We're gonna keep scratching. At some point we'll be able to finally get there. We scratching. When we get these shovels, we'll be able to dig. But for real, we still scratching. Right? But we scratching well. I think we scratching well. We're leaving some marks. They know we scratching at least, right? Like Margaret Sanger is one of the biggest eugenicists to ever exist, and yet we keep acting like she's all that. How you doing, Sister Monique? Right? Planned Parenthood is eugenics. It's based off of eugenics. The highest percentage, right? If you want to say per person, per capita type thought process, per person, whatever, the highest persons that deal with eugenics are persons who are black, so-called black. This is not right. The highest persons who are given placebos because they're not trusted, that they feel that they're going through something, are persons who are so-called black. Margaret Sanger literally started going. I want you to see how diabolical this is. Margaret Sanger, Shalom, how you doing? Call on Yah, or call on Yahweh, call on Yahuwah, whichever way you say it. Puerto Ricans as well, right? Right? For real, right? And by the way, we're all family. That's one of the things that's crazy too. That whole now I'm forgetting what it is. What is it? Ma something la raza? Mejora la raza? Me something la raza? Right? We got to get that out of our communities, for real. But the highest, Margaret Sanger would go into churches, just like they do with them condoms now, right? And now they took from the churches to the high schools too. But she would go into churches and she would get with these black pastors who perform Balaam doctrine and stuff, right? Yeah, it is Mejora la raza. I don't know why I can't say my Z. Mejora la raza. La raza, right? I know it can be said different ways. But anyway, but that we got to get rid of that too. We talked about that already. I don't know if it was in this series or not. I think it was in this series, right? But we have to also realize and recognize the craziness, the foolishness that's going on, right? Margaret Sanger is uplifted as some hero, and Margaret Sanger legit said that she hated Jewish persons and so-called black persons. Do you not even see the correlation spiritually? She said that they were not willing. We were not capable of raising ourselves. She said we could not handle any type of money. She used the same dog whistle. Come on, right? These persons that we say don't have ears to hear, these are dogs that can't hear us speak, but they can hear the whistle. And she would use these terms and then went to churches and got these Balaam doctrine preachers. If you don't know about Balaam, basically these are preachers who are technically prophets of the nation of Israel, and yet you are more worried about money, right, than they are about righteousness. So this is why you go into all these churches and you'll see, like, wait a minute, does the church have a restaurant? And a couple ATMs and several books. By the way, I'm not mad at it if you're going to use it for the community, for real, but you're just using it for a place to have like a big mall and stuff. Now these huge malls and these huge temples to Yah and all this stuff that they say, now all of them are getting empty because persons are realizing that this ain't reversing the curse. See, we standardize that. We allowed the standardization of it, at least, to be performed right in our neighborhoods, and now we're realizing that it ain't doing nothing. How you gonna have all this land and you ain't growing no food? We're starting to realize something's afoot. Something ain't adding up. These money changes, right? Something ain't adding up, right? But anyways, Margaret Sanger. Let me stay on mission, right? We're almost time. It's almost time to close. Margaret Sanger is this person who literally said Jewish persons and black persons they can't take care of families. They cannot learn. They cannot do these things. And so and the reason why they're having issues is because they have so many children. So what we'll do is we'll make sure that we continue what the eugenicists did, right? And we'll continue to go ahead and take the children and off them, right? And if they get even close to full term, we'll continue to off them and take them out and experiment on them, right? This will save their communities, but ultimately it's going to save us because we don't have to worry about this 1350 thing, right? Now, she wouldn't use all these terms, but that's basically if you look at what she writes, or somebody like a Susan B. Anthony, you know, Susan B. Anthony, who it gets all this credit. Susan B. Anthony let Harriet Tubman speak. Susan B. Anthony was asked specifically, would you support black men voting? She said, I'd rather get my right arm to make sure that black men's vote actually matters. Stop it. Stop it. It's like when persons are so busy in the Marvel comics, and you hear Stan Lee passed away. We're going to make sure Stan Lee hated black folk. We can look at quotes. All these persons trying to defend Gandhi. You better not say anything about Gandhi. Gandhi hated black folk. Look at what he wrote when he was in South Africa and how he said that the white person should understand that because of the Greeks that were in India at the time, that him and them eugenically are closely related and almost might as well be assumed to be white. So you might as well treat them better than you do black folks. Stop treating us like black folk. That was what he marched on. He didn't march on inclusion for everybody of color. He said that his race was better than the black race. We're going to stop this weird thing to where we're letting eugenics tell us how to operate at some point. Margaret the Satanic singer, right? At some point we got to stop. Okay, so if we're going to overcome bias in medicine and healthcare, right? This is why our sisters, we advise you, get second opinions regularly. I don't care if you've had that doctor been your favorite doctor for 50 years, get second opinions on a regular basis because you might be shocked and surprised. Matter of fact, go to herbalists. Matter of fact, you have a herbalist here at SOC. Go to Elder Maya, right? In the same way, by the way, or if you go to somebody else who has health products or whatever, but when you go to these persons, please make it a point to get second opinions by somebody who's actually worried about you, who's of your culture, who's also a woman who's part of the nation, who believes in the same things as far as what you should eat and doesn't want you to chemicalize everything. Please go to these persons. And by the way, if you can do so too, with the same way you would do with the world, maybe sow into these persons too, because it would help your community be in a position to where these persons can actually do things without having to keep trying to go back into the world, right? Here's another one. Bring documentation. Here we go again. Documentation, photos, logs, medical history to every appointment. Do you make sure when you show up to your appointments that you show up with your own medical history, with your own folder? Do you have a copy of all your stuff? When they put copies of stuff, they taught us this in the military. When you go to the doctor and they have this, that, or whatever, hey, I need a photocopy of that. Oh, okay, or you putting a shot in my arm? I know that the shot comes with all the stuff that's on it or whatever. I want to read that because the same way when I get a capsule of medicine, right? And it has all the instructions, it says all the stuff and side effects on it, and somebody's supposed to talk to me about that. You're supposed to do that with the shot before you put it in my arm. I want to know what that is, right? But also bring your medical history. So when they start talking about, well, you don't deal with blah, blah. No, doc, I have a problem with this, that, my breathing. Well, we don't really sit. Okay, look, doc, if you do this to me legally, you're going to be held accountable because here in my file, it says that I have asthma, I've dealt with this, I've dealt with that, right? I've had lung issues, I've had heart issues, I've had clots, I've had blah, blah. Show up with your stuff. If you must go to the doctor all the time, right? There's another one. Understand race-based algorithms that were removed. Right? Now somebody says if they're removed, how are they a problem? They were removed officially, but the system's still based off of them. So I'm just going to name these for you. I don't even know 100% what all these do, to be honest. So look these up for yourself. Study to show yourself approved. See if I'm in the ballpark, right? But this is just what was suggested when I looked up, or what was looked up for me. EGFR. Matter of fact, I guess I could just type it in, right? I'm sitting up here acting like I can't type this stuff in. Was it EGFR? It is, so look that up. EGFR refers to estimated glomerular filtration rate, a key measure of kidney function, calculated from a blood test, serum creatine, plus age, sex, and sometimes other factors. That would mean they're talking about factor in race. to see how well your kidneys filter waste, with a number of 90 plus being normal, below 60 for 3+ months, indicating chronic kidney disease. By the way, you know that different persons of different families have different heart rates and stuff too, right? Learn this stuff. Or spirometry, SPI, metry, metry. And also learn and understand what VBAC is. VBAC, I'm not 100% sure what that one is too. I've heard of it, but I don't know it. Oh, okay, there we go. Okay, look at the history of vaginal birth after cesarean, right? A lot of persons have told you can't have a baby again once you've had a baby. That's not true. Or you've had a C-section. That's not true. That's not true, right? There are risks, right? But there's risks that come with everything. And doctors make more money off the C-section. So if you do it for the C-section the first time, they're going to try to get you to go for the C-section again and again and again. Matter of fact, if you look at the history of the C-section is something that the Ugandan nations and cultures came up with, and it was found out about by the West in like the late 1800s. So make sure you look up VBAC stuff. Also look up stuff about hysterectomy. They be trying to take your womb and your stuff, and look up what bottom out means. If they literally take your womb, like when they take that stuff, you know your womb is in place and your mesentery and everything. If there's nothing there, a lot of sisters go through stuff to where your stuff starts to try and literally fall out through the vaginal area. Yeah, yeah. You need your womb. You need all of it, even when you stop having babies. You do. Don't let them take it. They're banking on a lot of times that you're going to feel so much pain that to get out of the pain, you rather have them take it out because of all the polyps and stuff going on down there. They're banking on the fact that you would literally just give up in excruciating pain and you just want the pain to go away. Make sure you're hydrated. Make sure you're eating correct. Make sure you're going through. Yeah, you might deal with some of that stuff, but when your womb gets taken out, there's so many different side effects that come with that, and you'll have to deal with that for the rest of your life. You were not designed to live without a womb. Okay? Everything that Yah gave you is for you. All right? And if you have had it taken out, make sure that you're dealing with somebody outside of the system that took it out, right? To help you, since they obviously didn't care enough about you to make sure that they didn't do that to you. Hey, I mean, I'm praying for your daughter. Everybody has free will, free choice. But man, they tried to do that to my wife. Basically, for her, she needed to be more hydrated, and then that allowed her to be able to do better. You know, they said she wouldn't be able to have a baby. They told her they were yelling at her as she was leaving the hospital, talking about, "You're gonna die. You're gonna do like that." Like the person came in to do surgery and was yelling at her, talking, "You're gonna die," and you blah blah, as her sister was wheeling her out. Don't let these persons do that to you. All right, choose culturally. Once again, here we go. Choose culturally competent providers when possible. Here's another one. Advocate using strong language such as, what differential diagnosis are you ruling out? In other words, ask questions and don't be afraid to say, hey, are you ruling out anything that's different? And why are you ruling it out? By law, they're supposed to tell you. If they keep it from you, you might be able to get some money to actually get some real help. Right? By law, they better tell you what you ask. Here's another one. Document, right? Use strong language such as, document that you are declining my request. If you give them a request, right, there is no such thing because of the Nuremberg codes. Look that up. I can't talk about it too much because they'll take my stuff down, right? They've done that before in the past, right? Even though I don't make money off of AdSense and all that anymore, they'll take my stuff down because I tell the truth. So I'm going to be careful how I word this, but you do some research. I'm giving you breadcrumbs. Tell the doctor, document that you are declining my request because of the Nuremberg Code. You are not allowed to be experimented upon unless you sign off on it. So if you ask for something, they work for you. If they decide that they will decline their request, tell them they better document it. And you don't have to leave until you see that it's documented. And once you see that it's documented, tell them once again, you want a copy, and leave with your copy so that you can go ahead and have in your hand when you go to get that second opinion. Or if you have to take legal action, you can have it right there saying, hey, I simply requested, and they tell me what they're leaving out. I requested, if there's something different that might work. I requested, hey, I know that you can do something different. I'm asking for something different, and you are declining my request, right? And I had them document it, by their own hand, right? And if you can, use persons who are, as well, for us in our culture, we say Israelite, but use persons who are of your culture, right, as doulas and midwives to reduce birth trauma. Right, spoke about the stuff financially. Let's go on to the next one. Right? How do we overcome bias in AI, tech, and algorithms? So we talked about AI, tech, and algorithms earlier. How do we overcome the bias in it? Here's some stuff. Opt out of unnecessary tracking data and facial recognition. Right? Beloved, please, if you haven't already, please don't allow the phone. It already knows your face and everything anyways, but when you allow it for facial recognition, it gets to study a whole bunch of stuff, including, believe it or not, your brain, how you breathe, right? This is why they have apps in there literally that can track your heart rate, how you breathe, do all this stuff or whatever. You give them a lot of information, right? It's like when you love to go to the store. We love to go to the store and we can't wait for somebody to say, oh, thank you for being a Jewel shopper, a Piggly Wiggly shopper, a Giant shopper, a Safeway Giant shopper, a Jewel Osco shopper, a Roses shopper, whatever, right? And we can't wait. We cannot wait to be able to go ahead and get a little card so they can have all our information, right? Same thing happens on your phone, not just with facial recognition, but even when you play games. I'm a little bit of a gamer. I don't get to play games on the level I used to, but from time to time to kind of woosah and get my mind off of stuff. I'm an introvert as well of sorts, so I like to go in places at certain times of day and just like do anything I can to kind of get my mind off of all the stuff that I've got on my plate. And so I like to play again. One of the things that I make sure I do, ask app not to track, right? Do not send me notifications, right? Even though they still have the stuff in there, at least you are lawfully disconnecting yourself from a lot of different things, right? When your data is being sold, and also where a lot of bias is there, right? So maybe to play the game, I might have to tell them that I'm over 18, right? Or I'm over 21, but I don't have to tell them, but I don't have to get into color, this and that, what city, all this stuff, whatever. All right. Choose platforms with transparent AI policies. A lot of these places you go on, they don't tell you what AI is used or that AI is used at all. By the way, if you can I also just put this out there real quick? You know that if you're using AI today, that they've been using it for the last 40, 50 years. You are aware of that, correct? Sometimes when they tell us in 1977, so-and-so created, right? So-and-so created the internet. It didn't even exist until the 1990s. The internet was being used in World War I and World War II. How are you using the internet? Now, did it look exactly the way it looks today? No. But an internet or an intranet, right, is basically just talking about the wiring. You're thinking internet means www dot, but your phone lines are an internet. If you were on the phone in the 70s, you were on the internet or on an internet. Matter of fact, there are many internets. This is why there's a .com or .gov or .uk or .cds or right? That's why there's a dark web. There's this, there's that. There are many internets. We're just talking about the wiring. That's it. And the internet, if they stop it from going to somewhere, they know how to stop the wiring. They know how to use software to tell the hardware not to give it to certain places. So that's why in North Korea, they don't get to see certain things. In China, they don't get to see certain things, but they get to see more, right? In Russia, they don't get to see certain things. This is why also a lot of you pay for those apps to where you can go ahead and bounce off of different things or whatever and still be able to watch things that maybe, or be part of things or be on apps that technically you're not supposed to be on in the country that you're in at the time, right? That's just telling you where to bounce it off. But the internet is physical. It's like those of you who say, I have cable and I have wireless connection. You have wireless connection to a point, but everything up until that point, right, is a wire connected. It's still connected to a satellite. When somebody says, I have satellite cable versus wired cable, that used to be a thing back in the day, my cable satellite, all your cable is satellite. You just happen to have a dish that's at your house rather than your wiring went all the way to the main dish. And the dish that's at your house, by the way, is not connected all the way up into the sky. It's actually connected to the dish that's connected to the one all the way in the sky. You're using the same stuff. So be careful, right? Choose platforms that are transparent about these AI policies, because you've been going through a lot of AI and not even knowing that you've been using AI. They've been using AI on you for a long time. It's just like when persons say, don't get into cryptocurrency. Do you not realize that if you have a bank card, that you haven't had money on that bank card since bank cards have existed? You know that, right? Like bank cards are cryptological. Bank cards are artificial number or artificial money that you have represented as numbers. If somebody says, well, you need cash, some of you have cash in your pocket. A lot of you stopped having cash in your pocket 20 years ago. Okay. All right. Advocate for external audits of algorithms. You know, you can actually ask for someone else, right? You can hire somebody, you can pay somebody to take an audit of something that you're about to be part of and to see how their AI works. Just like you know, if you're going into business with somebody and you have a business, they have a business, you can have somebody audit their business. You can have somebody audit the way that they use AI. Okay, push for biometric privacy laws, right? That's, you know, more so fighting the system, getting votes, stuff like that. Support tech initiatives from Afrocentric data sets, right? Demand explanation of AI decision logic in hiring and lending. In other words, where are you getting your data from? What does AI look at when it's trying to hire? Because if I find out that AI is using the same thing that the person who doesn't like because of the color of my skin is using, right, whether that be white or black, then I have the same problem. That's right, you making digital transactions every time you swipe the card. All right, number 4, overcoming policing and court bias. Another place that we did bias, we've actually already talked about in this series. So just once again, these are reminders. Know your rights, right? Main ones: do not consent to searches. Do not consent to anything. By the way, don't talk to police officers. Do some research, right? So, for example, I'm gonna just do something real quick. This is something you can easily do in your car if you forget. You ready? Let's see. I'm not gonna say who lives where. I know where a lot of you happen to live, right? So let's do this like this. In Mississippi, do I have to show my ID to a police officer? This simple search. What does it say? Yes, in Mississippi, you generally must show your ID during a traffic stop. And while no universal stop and identify statute exists, refusing to identify yourself during a lawful detention, so that's where the key is. That's why they said traffic stop there. See, you got to know AI not putting this stuff together. You got to discern. So as long as it's a lawful detention, if it's not a lawful detention, I don't have to show you anything in Mississippi. Right. That being said, if you are lawfully stopped, yes, you in that situation better show your ID, right? Or else it can lead to a disorderly conduct charge. Something that simple, right? Knowing my rights. Okay. If we got persons on here, hey, I'm in Baltimore, right? So let me put in Maryland. Do I have to identify myself to a police officer? All right. This is simple, right? This is simple stuff that you can do to protect yourself. You getting yourself and stuff, and you thinking you have to tell them this and do all this. You don't even have to give them their name. Watch this. Here you go. In Maryland, no, not always. Maryland does not have general stop and identify statute. So you usually don't have to provide ID unless you are driving, receive a citation, or are lawfully detained with reasonable suspicion of crime. Providing false information is always illegal, so don't lie. So you don't have to say anything unless there is a reason why you are lawfully being detained. Now that means you have to know law a little further, right? But let's keep on going. We have persons that are part of us. So let's see. In California, do I have to identify myself to police officers? You see how easy this is, where we can find out our rights and protect ourselves? No, not always in Cal. I'm not saying this is the end all be all of anything, right? But I'm just saying we could at least start to implement these things. Here we go. No, not always in California. You only must identify yourself if you are lawfully detained. Here we go. So lawfully detained is different. We're talking about if the police says, hey, I want to talk to you. Just stay quiet. What, you don't want to talk to me? That's kind of suspicious. Stay quiet. You mind if I see your ID? Just stay quiet. And if you feel like you must say something, officer, I am not, by the laws of the state of California, I don't have to talk to you or give you any ID unless you can tell me why you're lawfully detaining me. Because even if you were to detain me, I would not, I unless I know it to actually be lawful and I agree with it, I still wouldn't speak. Right? I have my Fifth Amendment rights as well. If you feel like you must say something, you don't even have to say anything. But everybody just starts talking, oh, well, it's okay, and this, that, and yeah, and they're looking for you to say anything that allows them to detain you. Right? And then after they finish doing whatever they're saying to you, you know what other question you need to really, so besides, questioning or telling them you don't consent to searches or just not saying anything, then at the end, you need to learn how to say, am I free to go? Right? At the end, you need to learn how to say, am I free to go? Are you going to talk to, am I free to go? Well, I mean, I just want to talk to you, sir. Am I free to go? What's wrong? Why can't I? I mean, to now, I'm suspicious of this. Can I look at your car? Am I free to go? Sir, no, you're not being detained. Well, then if I'm not being detained, I'm free to go. Right? Like, you don't, right? Now, when you learn more law, if you want to tell them how they work for you, make sure that you have it together. But if you want to tell them, sure. But make sure that you at least know law. The Bible even says, know the law greater than the scribes and the Pharisees. Right? Invoke your right to silence and counsel immediately. Once again, Fifth Amendment. And even if you go deeper, the Sixth Amendment, because the Sixth Amendment is when you get the question, what type of trial is this? Or what am I on trial for if you even end up on trial? Or if I'm going to court? Is this equity? Is this law of equity? Is this law of equity? I'm having an issue with the other ones. Law of equity, is this maritime law or is this common law? You can ask questions. And you can ask the question and ask the judge, because the judge will realize, oh, wait a minute, if this is the wrong type of law, he shouldn't even be in front of me because the judge is only allowed to do one type of law. We should know this. Demand that predictive policing be banned in your city. That's running through the streets and stuff like that. Question sentencing algorithms. Right? Like COMPAS, COMPAS. Go look up what COMPAS stands for. That's an algorithm. They use that to sentence persons. Do you know that the judge does not always go off of their own mindset, but sometimes they sentence you based off of the algorithm? If you did this, according to this, we'll see if that thing that they're using to sentence you is something that has a lot of racist rhetoric in it. Record interactions and request badge numbers. You always have the right to do that. All right, we talked about education and bias and that, right? Here's some stuff real quick for that. We already talked about this yesterday, so let me just throw this in here real quick. Request teacher changes if bias occurs. Demand written records for disciplinary actions. Please make sure that if they do disciplinary actions, you ask, you demand. You have the right to have copies of those things, right? Demand written records for disciplinary actions. Supplement all the stuff. If you know that your child is in a system where they're not getting biblical centric stuff, make sure that you given it to them in some way, shape, or form, in some other way, right? Challenge tracking decisions, right? Because they track these children, they track what they do. Request this stuff. Request the criteria on how they track these children in writing, and make sure that you build an ecosystem outside of traditional school systems. That's why we do what we do at SOC. All right, number 6. Overcoming bias in employment. Document everything: emails, conversations, task assignments. Use professional leverage phrases. For example, this is when you send something to somebody, start off with stuff like, or make sure you include things like, this is for documentation purposes. Making it a point that everything that you're getting and everything you're giving is going to be documented. Request clear numerical evaluation criteria. Right? That's algorithm and stuff as well. But also too, how many times has this happened? What is the amount of this? How much money? Blah, blah, blah. Right? You have the right to do that. Build income streams outside of your employer. That means for us, get these businesses going and support each other. Right? Seek mentors and sponsors, not just allies. See if somebody there actually has your best benefit at heart. You might find somebody on the job like that. Might not. Prayerfully you do. Number 7, overcoming environmental bias. Environmental bias. Check neighborhood environmental risk. Right? See if we need to change stuff. You'd be surprised. Like, what's in the water? What's in the air? What's in the chemicals? What chemicals are there, rather? Certain chemicals are put in food and sold certain places where they're not sold in other places. Certain systems, we know this, certain systems, the water is really messed up, right? There's certain things that you eat, certain places where you get corn, the corn is sprayed with certain things. This has been proven in Berkeley University, decades ago now at this point, where it's been proven that literally they would put things in the food, in the corn that they were spraying with, that caused frogs to go from male and eventually start having female parts and wanting to have intercourse with other males. If that's being put on your corn, maybe there's some truth and some validity to when somebody says, hey, you are what you eat, right? Okay? Different things like that. Advocate for environmental justice policies. For us, really, we need to make sure that we look over ourselves. Learn your neighbors, right? Even if you don't talk to your neighbors, learn your neighbors enough to make sure you know what's going on. When possible, make strategic relocation decisions based on health and safety. If you got to leave, you got to leave. The list goes on and on. But long story short, because time is almost up, right? Hey, what's up? What's up, Carlos? If that's your name. Because Bob Marley's not mine. That being said, I get called Bob Marley like every day. I look nothing like him, so you just show your racism. That being said, though, hello to you. Do you have anything of value to say? Because Bob Marley is not, once again, as I say all the time, Bob Marley is not somebody that I'm upset being called, saying that I look like him. you know, I can see if you call me a coon or something, we might have to have some words. But even with that, I wouldn't care because you don't know me. And you don't know yourself enough to love yourself. So I guess that's why you express what you express. But I hope you have a great day. All right. And thank you, moderators. So I'm sorry. So here we go again. Here we go. So for biblical and spiritual framework on overcoming these biases. We already talked about Proverbs 11:1. We already talked about Proverbs chapter 20, verse 23. These unequal weights, this unequal balance, making sure that we get this stuff together. That was more financially, but it's still the framework of what we should be looking at, making sure that we have proper things balanced the way that the Most High says they should be on his books, on our books, the way he says. If not, this is an abomination. We learned that earlier, right? So let's go to Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. Here's some ways as we get ready to take our leave for today. This is the end that I have today. We'll do part 3, our last part of this series within a series tomorrow, right? In standardization, right? Matthew chapter 10, verse 16, right? Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. All right, it says this. This is Hananiah. This is the Messiah. I want you to recognize this. He says, Hananiah, pay attention. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves, or some would use the term gentle as doves, right? Now, this is him saying that he's going to send us into the world. And if you know about this, this is us being sent, 2 by 2, and being sent out into a situation where we're going to be dealing with a lot. And there are persons who are out there as wolves, who literally look for the sheep, and they're going to hunt us because that's what wolves do in their pack. But we have to recognize that we're protected. And he said we don't see it as much as, this is where faith and working in your faith have to go together, faith and works. We say we have faith that Yah will provide all our needs according to his riches and glory. Right? We say that he will provide all of our needs according to what? His riches and glory, what he determines wealth is, right? That's what we say. How you doing, Linus? Okay, cool. So, in all this stuff, that's what we say. We say we believe. Yehoshua, when he sent us out 2 by 2, right, when he sent his disciples out 2 by 2, he did not send them. He said, don't bring extra money. He said, don't bring extra clothing. Don't bring a change of shoes. He said, you go out with what I told you to go out with. And believe that whatever you need is supplied. So we must recognize that our economic, our socioeconomic, our thought process, our ideologies, our gentrifying and righteousness, whatever we're doing, these things are not coming through the world. We are more than overcomers of the world if we live by the word. The word does tell us how to do things financially, yes, right? But we don't have to do things the way, like, we're not worried about what the world states we have to live by. This is why we have to create a society and a nation and be dedicated towards it. That the goal is creating the nation, right? So, and when we go out there, we must be wise as serpents, simultaneously gentle as doves, right? We must be wise, right? By the way, when it says this, you must comprehend this is not just saying be out there willy-nilly. A serpent knows when to strike, but a serpent doesn't strike unless it needs to. Because, like, for example, if a serpent, I don't care if it's a king cobra, if a serpent comes up on you, the king cobra does not want smoke. It will rise up and say, okay, if you force me to fight, I will force you. But the only reason the king cobra rises up is because it's afraid of you. That's why, right? The black mamba doesn't want any smoke with you, right? The black mamba doesn't slither around going, oh, everybody's just afraid of me, ha ha ha, right? If you come up on it, it rises up because it doesn't want to be squashed. You're bigger than it, right? I don't care if you're long. If you say it could be longer than you, whatever. No, you're bigger than these snakes, right? So the snake understands that it's been given something that scares everybody called venom. It has something in its mouth. This is the context. It has something in its mouth, right? If you force it to, it will bite you. And by the way, serpents are wise enough to know if they need to give you a predatory bite, if they need to give a defense bite. I know you've been taught this. You guys think that everybody who gets bit by a king cobra, if they don't get, um, the reverse as far as the neurotoxins and everything going on with the venom, if they don't get the anti-venom, you've been taught that they are going to die 100%. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit over time. We're ending now, I promise. Right? You've been taught that they die 100%. But that's not the reality, because if a king cobra bites you, for example, or a black mamba bites you, for example, right? Or whatever kind of moccasin or whatever bites you, that's poisonous, etc. When they bite you, if it's in defense, if they're just trying to warn you, right? If they're just trying to say, get away from me, they will bite you and not put any venom in you. Because it's wise enough to know that it only has a certain amount of venom. Or even if it does use venom, it only uses enough to get the point across and to leave and to get out of there, right? But it has this ability in its mouth, and it just slithering along, having the ability to protect itself when necessary, right? And to devour, right? Death and life in the power of the tongue, so to speak. It having this ability to do this, it scares anybody around who is not a snake and makes them afraid. We must be wise enough to know that if we walk in the word of Yah, the world is walking around worried about us. Is worried about us, right? Is worried about us not because you can have no fear, but be of great courage because they're actually afraid of you, right? They look at you as the snake, but the snake is wise, right? But our goal is to really be as harmless as doves. Our goal is to be harmless. Our goal is to just be, like a pigeon that you see walking around. We're not hurting anybody. We're like a dove. We're not hurting anybody. Our goal is to be as wise as serpents and know that you have something powerful in you that can change anything. This thing that you have in you is the word of Yah. Right? So build, collect, right? So we can build. I only have two more. I'm not going to read them, or I might read one. But, I won't read this one. Acts chapter 2. We want to build community in the same way. We have the power of Holy Spirit if we keep the holy days. If you know about the day of Pentecost, the day of Pentecost had been celebrated every year from when we had been released from captivity of Kemet. So we've always celebrated Shabbat or Shavuot or Pentecost. We've always celebrated that. But this time when we celebrated it, after Yehoshua had given up the ghost, came back, and now had ascended on high, he gave us a command to celebrate it again in Jerusalem, the same place that we read about in Psalm 122 earlier. And when we went and we were obedient, we received Holy Spirit. And in receiving Holy Spirit, guess what we did? We preached and proclaimed the word. And we proclaimed what we were already living by. And with the power of Holy Spirit, persons saw what happens when we come together, and they found it to be so powerful that many of them left their culture and became grafted in and became Israel and became kingdom. Do you know what happens economically if by the thousands every day persons come into the kingdom and actually give and operate properly and make sure that we're supporting each other and supporting businesses and stuff? Could you imagine thousands coming in every day? And like we talked about before, if we had 1,000 families, 1,000 persons who decided every day they would just give $1, could you imagine, right? That would be $365,000 a year. You have a 5-10 year plan, it's over, right? Right? That becomes 365 million. Right now, imagine every year we're doing what we're supposed to do and balancing things correctly and making sure we're supporting one another. Imagine that goes to next year to where you've had thousands come upon every day. All right, we trying to just make sure that we can get us to do what we're supposed to do and have a couple here or there. Can you imagine that in the kingdom we start working together as a whole and thousands of persons are coming in every day? And we get to the next year. Let's just say not even every day. We go from 1,000 this year to the next year is $10,000 a day because 10,000 persons are given every day. Could you imagine? See, this is kingdom principle. Persons expect for me to come on and beg and plead and stuff like that for tithes and offering. I'm like, could you give $1 a day? But after a while, I've realized I put out different initiatives. We try to call this stuff creative. I've realized that, hey, if you're going to be faithful, if you're going to be a laborer, see, the harvest is plentiful. The stuff is already there. The food is already there. The land is already there. The opportunity is already there. The business is already there, right? The websites are already there. All these things are like, hey, everybody, you need to get off of the stuff that we're doing, and we need to find out a new way to get to this and use this one. I'm just being honest. The stuff is already there, beloved. If I send you to 7 other platforms and say, okay, go to 7 other platforms and do this and do that, if we're not going to do the labor, then we're not going to harvest. If you got 10 persons trying to harvest what's created for 500,000, we're going to fall short because the stuff will go bad, right? What value is the salt if it loses its savor? So now it's time for us to proclaim this, to live this, to be righteous, and to be prepared for thousands coming in. We got infrastructure, right? But let's work it now. Lastly, right? Last verse, Amos chapter 5, verse 15. I'm not reading anything past this, right? No verses past this. I got this, and then I'm going to finish with one. Actually, you know what? I think after this, I'm done. I'm done after this. We'll see you this evening. Sisters, don't forget, this evening you have a women's meeting at 7 p.m. New York time. All right. All praises to the Most High. Amos chapter 5, verse 15. It says this. It says, hate the evil and love what is to bow. And establish judgment in the gate. When persons come in and out, the word should be used to judge this stuff. The standard should be there. It may be that Yahweh Elohim of hosts will be gracious unto the remnant of Joseph. Now, this is very specific. If you're being gracious to the remnant of Joseph, that's talking about the 11th nation, the 12th child, right? That being said, and to a certain extent, maybe this even extends to Manasseh and Ephraim, right? That being said, it's basically telling us if I could make it condense it, it's our responsibility to use to use whatever we can to protect the vulnerable and expose injustice. And prayerfully, you're seeing now in these last couple of days that we're exposing this injustice, which is coming through standardization. This stuff has been standardized to allow injustice to just be rebranded, recoded, become algorithmic. And for us to go, oh, well, since there's technology, it must be better. Technology is just furthering it. The technology was created by the same persons that just used to do it themselves. Right? So Love you all. I appreciate you. Thank you for being on. I really, really do. Tonight at 7 p.m. New York time, Sisters Women Meeting at 7. 8 p.m. New York time, we'll have a hashtag Real Talk live session. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. New York time, live session again, but we'll probably finish this up talking about standardization. And then at 10 a.m. New York time will be the podcast. I forget who's preaching tomorrow. Who's preaching tomorrow? Like, what is today? I don't even know my date, y'all. I'm sorry. Okay. Oh, okay. Praise Yah. Elder Anais will be giving the word tomorrow. Praise Yah. And then at 10 a.m. New York time for the podcast. At 11 a.m. New York time, Elder Maya will be teaching our children. 12:15 p.m. New York time on Clapper, and we'll try to have on TikTok, on the original TikTok channel, Kofi _ for the channel. We'll try to be ready for our watch party at 12:15 p.m. New York time. And then if you can join us in the afternoon, 2 p.m. New York time, our international thing will be for everybody. We'll be on a live session we've been invited to, and I'll be giving the word. I think I only have like 20 minutes, so I'm not sure when I'll be allowed to preach and teach, but I'll just have about 20 minutes, so it won't even be that long. So if you can come and support us, that'll be on Kofi _ 43, same place we normally do the TikTok live, and we'll try to record it as well. If we record it, it'll be recorded on YouTube, even though more than likely that'll become something that's for Patreon. But if you can make it around that time, I can't keep up the whole thing. So the YouTube thing, I can't give an exact time for the recording due to the fact that when we record, I can't let the music and stuff that'll be playing on TikTok and everything go. So I won't be able to give you a specific time. I can try to maybe put it like out in an announcement somewhere, possibly, that, okay, we're starting, the word is starting now. Can't guarantee that, but I can try to do that for you all. But no, if you'd like to join us, TikTok, Kofi _ 43 is probably your best way of being able to support and do so. But even if you can't be there with us virtually, physically, etc., thank you for supporting us in advance. And thank you all so much for what you're doing, what you've been giving. Hopefully all is well with you all. I know that this is rough times for many of us financially, even keeping heat on, doing all types of stuff. So prayerfully everybody's doing what they need. Once again, there's certain things that we have to help out with. If persons let us know, even if it's vitamins, minerals, especially for those who are single parents, trying to ask you, help you all first. And then after that, persons that might need some help here or there, we'd love to be able to help you as well. So if you want to put out some information for us to know, if you want to contact us and let us know, we'd love to be able to help and support as best we can. And Tada, my Shepachim, we thank you everybody for being who the Most High has called you to be, or becoming somebody who's more, who's seeing more value in going through that journey. So thank you all again. I very much so appreciate you all. I look forward to talking to you guys very soon. If I don't see you this evening, early Shabbat Shalom to you all. And prayerfully, this has been something that's kind of helping you to see some things that's a little different, especially for persons who aren't used to being with us, where we would think that preaching only, preaching of the word for some reason doesn't talk about what we go through in our daily struggles and stuff. But we're trying to make sure we continue to change lives one mind at a time, of being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. So with that being said, we give our honor and praise to the Most High. We give our praise and honor to him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. As always, you can check her out on TikTok, YouTube, or website, and Pinterest at Bloom and Flourish. To the ministerial staff, moderators, SOC, Lottie Darn every time, first time, long time, last time, agree, disagree, watching with us live, watching this later on. We can't do this without you, and we're thankful. And even for those who dismiss, troll, are angry, frustrated, whatever, I thank you, because it's a reminder that what we do is necessary. So I appreciate you, even if you don't appreciate us. We still lift you up in value, and we're praying that what we're doing might cause a bridge, might cause a seed even to be planted in your heart, that maybe one day we'll be able to penetrate and grow something that grows 30, 60, and 100-fold, that you too would be able to receive the kingdom exactly the way the Most High wants you to. So that being said, thank you everybody. We'll do our shout out here on TikTok. Thank you for joining us on TikTok, Facebook, Clapper, YouTube. If you came over from the podcast, if you came over from IG, whatever the case might be, we appreciate you so very much. And until I have the chance to be before you again, remember that you are loved, you're necessary, you are majestic, you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, will be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom, take care, be at peace.